Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and we have a monumental moment in the growth and development of Minnesota Vikings quarterback JJ McCarthy. Yes, this is one thing that all great quarterbacks must have in their life. They must go through this, they must get to the other side, they must battle through the difficult training camp practice. Oh, yes, yes, friends, it happened today. We knew it was bound to happen to JJ McCarthy, that he would not go through an entire NFL training camp where he had great day after great day, every single afternoon going out there and lighting up the Minnesota Vikings defense, laser shows every day out there at TCO Performance Center. No, it was bound to happen that JJ McCarthy did not on Tuesday, July 29th. Write it down as the day that it finally happened as him QB1. It wasn't a very sharp practice for JJ McCarthy. So here's what I'm going to do. Going to take you through what happened today out at practice. And then we got Kevin O'Connell at the podium, had some interesting things to say. And Jonathan Allen stopped and talked with a couple of us. And of course, your questions. And I've got a conversation with Ahmad Hicks from Fox 9 as well. But here's how it went down for JJ McCarthy's first tough practice, which obviously I'm looking at trades. Can you move him for Aaron Rodgers? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it was a difficult practice. And the way that it started out was okay. Their first run through 11 on 11s. But what they decided to do was today, situational stuff. Now, keep in mind that they were in shells today and it was not a full padded practice. The expectation is that tomorrow is going to be one heck of a practice with full pads because they have Thursday off. So you got fans in the stands, you got an off day the next day, and you just had a light practice today. That means everybody is ramping it up to 110. But what they were working on mostly was situational stuff. So that means red zone and then kind of an end of half, end of game where you start in the range of where you could kick a field goal, or if you have a negative play, you're probably punting, or you're looking for a fourth down conversion, like third down conversion, fourth down conversion, that kind of thing. So they're starting around the 40-yard line. And that was part of it at the end. But the red zone was the most difficult period for JJ McCarthy, where he had two different passes to Jordan Addison that were very, very close to being successful, but just a little bit too high. That he was leading Addison to the very back of the end zone from, I think they start at the 10-yard line. And so this is a 7-on-7 type of period in the red zone, just to be clear. And so he takes a snap and then everybody goes out on their routes and you try to throw a touchdown, right? So he throws it up to Jordan Addison in the corner of the end zone, reaches up, can't quite get it in the corner of the end zone. Then it's on the other side to Jordan Addison, can't quite get it. Then there's a quick out. He throws it. I think Jeff Okuda may have grabbed a little bit or maybe got a hand in, incomplete. And then the rough pass from JJ McCarthy, which kind of told you where he was at a little bit in terms of being sharp today, was he was trying to hit Josh Oliver in the back of the end zone coming across. Now, you guys who have watched the Vikings for a long time might remember Kyle Rudolph making a lot of those catches. And I think Josh Oliver could do the same kind of thing. He's just as big, gigantic hands, long arms, and McCarthy overthrew Josh Oliver. That is not an easy thing to do, to overthrow Josh Oliver in the back of the end zone. And it just sort of spoke to not having his same accuracy today that he has had in most of the practices so far. But again, this is the first time that they've done the goal line drill at a high speed here, not mini camp or not just kind of a warm-up drill, but really actually run it. And some of the timing may have just been ever so slightly off. And it's hard. This is why they went out and got Jordan Mason. This is why they went out and got offensive linemen, because it's hard to throw into the end zone every single time. You have to really anticipate. You've got to trust what you're seeing. And when you run the ball well, you just give it to some big guy and he runs in the end zone. Like, it's a lot easier to do that. And we saw that from McCarthy. So this is one that he can build on a little bit. I also think maybe a chemistry type of thing with Jordan Addison, where understanding when we're talking about game of inches that it's going to be a little bit earlier or a little bit lower or a little bit whatever it might be to Addison. And I think that the whole idea of McCarthy and touch is just a little bit of something he's going to continue to work on. Like, he's made massive strides, absolutely enormous strides when it comes to the touch on the football, but that's still growing. Like, he didn't go from a guy who was just throwing fastballs a year ago to being Steve Young in a day. So there's still going to be times where he's working on putting touch on the ball and it's a little bit high. And I think that that's what it really comes down to, is when you're trying to take the RPMs off, is what, KOC referred to it the other day, that sometimes you're taking a little too much off. And I was making the golf analogy where if you're trying to put a little more arc on the ball or something, right? You may be trying to slow down or get underneath the ball and maybe, drop it on the green from 70 yards out. You might accidentally slow down a little too much and chunk it, right? And we have all done that, I'm sure, 100 times when it comes to playing golf. I think the same thing happens when you're learning new techniques and throwing the football and you're trying to take a little off and it can sail on you. So that happened a couple of times to JJ McCarthy. Now, there were some other throws where you were a little bit more like, what happened there? There was one to Jalen Naylor where he's running a deep out and McCarthy throws the ball just nowhere really near him. So kind of a misread, or the guys weren't on the same page. And that's typical type of stuff that we see from the early days of training camp. But still, you want to get that being more and more sharp. And when we're talking about every single detail of McCarthy, because everybody wants to know how JJ McCarthy looks, there have been a few of these kind of sloppy things over the last couple days. There was a miscue when it came to a handoff yesterday. There was the tough, and I'll have KOC talking about it, the tough end of practice with all the pressure from yesterday. So kind of carrying over that to today, it wasn't as on point as it should have been. And then he had a throw to Jordan Mason at the end of practice that just completely sailed on him. Should have been a pretty easy completion, just threw it just way over his head. That was the kind of day that it was. Now, the thing that I notice about JJ McCarthy is even when he is not on point, 100% locked in, like he was on Saturday, where we all walked out of that practice going, whoa, holy cow, because he was gunning it everywhere left and right and hitting every pass. It still wasn't a terrible practice for JJ McCarthy. I went through some of the miscues and the overthrows and stuff like that, but he also had some very, very good throws today as well. And one of them was a swing pass to Aaron Jones that had to have a little touch on it, and it led him perfectly up the field. So you can imagine the defense all dropping back, and he checks it underneath, but it wasn't like a little 3-yard check. It was kind of like a swing. So he had to lead it out in front of him. He reaches up and grabs it. Would have been a huge gain. And then there was another one. I thought the best throw of the day from JJ McCarthy is every time that he plays in a play action situation, it looks really smooth and really good. So there's a play action play, which you've seen the Vikings use a million times, where someone is going deep into the middle of the kind of intermediate area, call it 15 to 20 yards, maybe a little bit longer than that. And you run the play action. So you drop back, hold the ball out, tuck it, spin around, set, fire, bang to Jordan Addison right on time. And there's always been those throws from McCarthy in this camp and even toward the end of last year when he's being asked to run play action. He just seems to be very comfortable in doing it. And I'm sure that that's something that Kevin O'Connell has taken note of over the first couple days of training camp here, is just how good he looks in rhythm with play action. So this was not a tragic practice for JJ McCarthy. It wasn't one that would change my mind about JJ McCarthy, but the fact of the matter is that there is still development happening in real time with JJ McCarthy. And because he had played so well up until the final drill of yesterday and then onto today, maybe we got a little bit ahead of ourselves with, whoa, I mean, he is so sharp that there can still be days that it is not as locked in. And that is what you do on July 29th, which is build on it. And last year, JJ McCarthy was excellent at bouncing back. So if he had a tough practice, he would come back the next day and he would be on point. And tomorrow is really a day where they're going to want this offense to be very, very sharp, because they didn't get as much done today, I think, as they wanted to. And tomorrow, everybody will be back in. So there were some guys who were getting veteran days today. There was no Javon Hargrave. There was no Jonathan Allen, and Harrison Smith and Josh Metellus were both out. Did not see Isaiah Rodgers. KOC gave us the update on Isaiah Rodgers. He just called it soreness, and it sounds like he is expected to be back fairly soon. So it wasn't the entire starting group, which kind of made it worse that the practice did not go really well for the starting quarterback and they were in shells, which means that he wasn't getting as much pressure as he was the other day when the defensive line was absolutely out of their minds in the backfield every other play. So it should have been one of those fairly easy, straightforward practices, but the execution in the red zone is so much different in the NFL than it is from college. And it's something that you cannot really, I think, learn and study. You can't just go to the X's and O's on a board. You can't virtual reality your way to it. There's no way to practice it without practicing it. Like, this is something where now we have a baseline of he struggled with the touch in the red zone and the timing in the red zone in his first try in July. And how does that look as they go on and on and on? Nick, as far as his reaction to it, nothing. I mean, nothing from JJ McCarthy. His confidence is so high and so through the roof in himself that I think he takes a practice like that and he's probably unhappy. And I know last year he said that he went home and didn't take off his sweats to kind of be mad at himself. And then when he took it off, like wash it or flush it or whatever you want to use. But having seen McCarthy after practice, during practice, you're never going to see signs of him getting too angry with his teammates or head down or anything like that. He looks like the same JJ McCarthy every single time he goes out there. And we saw that in the preseason game last year. I mean, imagine you get your first chance to play as a Minnesota Viking. It's a full stadium of people. And in the first drive, you throw an interception. I'm sure he didn't feel too great about that, but you never saw him get down with that. We didn't see it last year, and we're not going to see it this year. And it wasn't so bad of a practice that everybody was, throwing water coolers or something. It was just one of those days where things didn't quite click. And look, the situational stuff is harder. The situational stuff is quite a bit harder. I mean, because you're looking at, all right, it's a 3rd and long. So they're going to be, dropping back in coverage or giving you a pressure or something. And it's so condensed in the red zone. Those were the 2 different drills that they did. So condensed in the red zone that you have to fit it into tight windows and you have to throw when guys aren't open and trust that they're going to be at a spot. And you have to deliver it to Josh Oliver way up at the top of his tippy of his fingers, which is a hard thing to do. And, seeing Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins over the last X number of years, even those guys had practices just like this. Many of them had many practices for those 2 quarterbacks just like this. But those guys also had years and years and years of running red zone drills and doing these same plays over and over and over again. And McCarthy is just getting going with that. And they're trying to get him up to speed as fast as possible. But that's the one area where, in comparison, if you run a play action and you've got Jordan Addison screaming wide open over the middle, I mean, you could just hit him, right? If you see it and you read the defense right and you do it in rhythm, bang, the ball comes out and there it is. When it comes to the red zone, it has to be a lot more of, okay, well, there's just somebody flashing open and you got to see it and you got to deliver it. This is an area he's going to have to work on going forward. That's the only real takeaway from today. It's not, oh, I'm suddenly concerned about JJ McCarthy. It's nope. It was a lot of situational stuff that didn't go that well. And there was a little bit of, I think, KOC on one particular play where something wasn't quite right and looked like he was a little frustrated. That was when they were running 11 on 11s in, trying to get first downs. But aside from that, nothing to be too worried about other than just, hey, it happened. It was bound to happen. And now tomorrow becomes a big day for JJ McCarthy to bounce back, get everybody reorganized, he'll get his center back after a veteran day, and they want to perform better than they did the last time that they played 11 on 11 versus the entire defense with pads, because the defense absolutely dominated along the D line with that. And so let me get to some other, I'm going to circle back to that point. I want to get to some other practice notes that I have. And then KOC talked about the end of that drill where it went badly for JJ McCarthy and his thoughts on that. But other notes from today, Will Fries was doing a lot today. It looks like he is almost fully back or is very close to being fully back. And he wanted to let Jonathan Harris know that. Jonathan Harris is a backup defensive tackle who's been around a little bit in the NFL. And on one play, it was a screen to TJ Hawkinson. Will Fries just drove him about 10 yards down the field and slammed him down. And I think it was Brian O'Neill ran up to him and, gave him the high five or whatever. Will Fries looks like he wanted to introduce himself to the Minnesota Vikings on this day. Like, even though they weren't in pads, like, hey, Big Fries is here or whatever, right? I mean, he is known for his physical nature, and that's what he wanted to show today. And we're going to keep looking for that throughout this camp. But that is so much different with Fries and his physicality than what we've seen from the guard position in I don't know how long. We just have not seen any semblance of that physicality, of that impose your will. I don't know when the last time it was that the guards did that. Probably 2017. I mean, Nick Easton was not a impose your will, neither was Pat Elfline. So even then, that was the best guard group that they had. But this is the first where you go, okay, Will Fries wants to push some dudes around, and they haven't had any guards who could push dudes around. Another somewhat interesting note today on the offensive line was that Brian O'Neill was getting the vet day. So it was actually Blake Brandel who played as a tackle, filling in for Brian O'Neill. So it was not Logan Brown, who was not practicing, not sure on that one, or Walter Rouse. Instead, it was not the young guys. Instead, they just bumped Brandel over to right tackle with Fries in at right guard. And then it was Justin School at left tackle, which, I mean, he's playing against really good players. Dallas Turner got him today, and it's not it's not promising at left tackle right now with Christian Darrisaw out there, but also you have to give credit to the other guys as well. That was something I want to throw out too, is that with the veteran days, we saw a lot of Dallas Turner and a lot of Dallas Turner looking good. He got a shout out from Kevin O'Connell today in the press conference. And I think, I've just sometimes we cross check with each other. Like, are you seeing what I'm seeing with Dallas Turner? Are you seeing what? And the takeaway from pretty much everybody early here in training camp is that Turner looks like he's out to prove something. And he definitely looks like all the offseason work that he put in, that he is ready to take that next step. It is only day 6, but the early signs are very good. And I thought he had an excellent practice. He may have been the best player out there over the last 2 days, other than Jonathan Greenard. The other day was absolute monster. But Turner has really, really made progress. He was hard to find sometimes last year in training camp, early on, especially, but really in training camp at all. It was okay. He's just not looking like he's going to be an impact player right away. Well, he has definitely looked like an impact player so far. We did see some punting. You guys have been asking about punting. You've been demanding punting. Well, we saw some punting. Only 3 punts from Ryan Wright and Oscar Chapman. And unfortunately, all 3 ended up being in the end zone for touchbacks. The first one from Ryan Wright should have been downed, but Trent Sherfield ain't here anymore. And it didn't look like Tim Jones could get to it. But the more interesting thing is who was back there returning. The first punt returner was Rondale Moore, and then Silas Bolden, and then Miles Price. As of right now, that looks like that's our battle that we're going to see between these three guys. And when they go into the preseason games, Rondale Moore, Silas Bolden, Miles Price, and off we go with the punting competition. But as of today, neither punter did a particularly great job in punting to those guys. So we didn't even really see any kind of return. But I know you guys want to know about the punting. One guy who did stand out was Ben Urasek. Ben Urasek is the undrafted tight end who has been getting the majority of the time out there with Gavin Bartholomew sidelined with a back injury. And Bartholomew was the 6th-round draft pick, but Urasek was somebody that they thought a lot of going into camp and had a pretty darn good mini camp. But today in the drill down at the goal line, Sam Howell kind of put one up for him and he went up and got it. I mean, he kind of mossed a guy. I mean, if this play had happened in a real game, Randy Moss would have been yelling, "You got mossed." I mean, he really went up and got it, tumbled to the ground. And I think it's just part of so far the story of tight end 3 is Urasek pretty clearly looks like the guy. And then Nesbitt, Ricci, and we're going to have to wait and see if we get Gavin Bartholomew anytime soon. Otherwise, it's going to be Urasek, or they might go out and get somebody else. But he certainly had, I think, the catch of camp so far. We also got a really good catch from Jashawn Jones, and it was not a great day for Sam Howell, but it was a much better day. I thought that he made a lot of improvement today from the last couple of days. Again, not flawless or anything like that, but was actually getting some completions going and had a completion to Jashawn Jones that was really good. And one of the things that I noticed was that Keenan McCardle seemed to be really pleased with the route combination between Jones and Ty Felton. It was one of those where you saw him on the sideline getting pumped up for those guys to make a play. And Jashawn Jones has been name dropped by Kevin O'Connell a few times. And I'll bring you a clip when I asked him about Lucky Jackson earlier in today's press conference, but just somebody to keep an eye on. Like right now, Lucky Jackson's still taking the majority with the ones, but Jashawn Jones a little bit mixed in. Rondale Moore actually mixed in more today than he has since the day that Jefferson got hurt. So a little bit of Rondale Moore, a little bit of Jashawn Jones getting in there. And Moore had a good catch today from Sam Howell as well, who, you know, he was looking a little bit more comfortable. Also, speaking of Rondale Moore, and every night we kind of come in and mention Zamiah Vaughn. He's just taking a ton of second team reps today. I noticed him in the red zone, one-on-one, matched up with Rondale Moore. Now, you would think Zamiah Vaughn's 6'1", that he's going to get smoked. And Moore put a move on him that he stayed right with him. I mean, he seems to have a calmness to him and just mirrors really well against these wide receivers. You add that with his playmaking skill he showed us in minicamp, and it looks like he's coming along pretty well. But the last 2 days have also belonged to Dwight McClendon, who had a nice interception against Sam Howell today, where Howell was kind of trying to throw the ball up down the sideline to Ty Felton, kind of on the, streaking down the sideline. And McClendon read it and went up and got the football. Yesterday, he had a tip, and it turned into an interception. So Dwight McClendon has played pretty well over the last couple of days, making plays on the football like he does, which ties into one of my takeaways from the early part of camp, which tomorrow I'm going to record a podcast with Dane Mizutani about just our biggest development so far. But I'll give you a sneak preview that I think the cornerback group has looked pretty good. And the depth of the cornerback group has looked pretty good with Vaughn emerging, and then Dwight McClendon making some plays as well, and Jeff Okuda looking pretty good so far. And then one last thing to bring up is the kicking. So Will Reichard, and I just want to warn everyone, this is like a trigger warning here. I should put it up on the screen. Like, turn away from the screen, turn away from the podcast if you can't handle hearing that Will Reichard missed a couple times. Turn away. Get your kids away from the YouTube. Not suitable for kids to hear that Will Riker did miss. But he did, and he's been just fine so far. They've been having him kick a lot of deep balls, which naturally, the NFL is now kicking from 50 all the time. And I think he went 5 for 7. Call it unofficial, 5 for 7 today, 5 for 6 the other day, and that's where we're at with Will Riker. But he did kick one. He still has a monster leg. He did kick one from about 40 something yards, call it 48, close to 50, that landed in the stands. And that's hard to do. I mean, he can kick absolute bombs, so it's not that big of a deal. That he missed a couple, it gets windy out there, it happens, but hasn't quite been as freakishly sharp as he was last year to start training camp. Okay, I'll get to your questions in just a couple minutes, but I want to bring you a couple of things that Kevin O'Connell talked about that were just really interesting today. And one of them, as we talk about JJ McCarthy having a tough time, it really went back to yesterday's practice at the end of practice, where the defensive line totally collapsed, the offensive line, and McCarthy was not able to have any success at the end in one of those kind of end of game winning drive drills, couldn't even move at all. And O'Connell was asked to talk about that drill specifically, and here's what he had to say.
The first play of the drill, you're always trying to get the drill off to a good start in that 2-minute setting. But end of half, can we kind of, capture the momentum of the drill by making a play on the first play, and then being able to play it out from there on our terms, and not just hope for a field goal, but maybe we go down and try to score. We've had some success over the years, these last three years, in that middle 8 kind of end of half phase, but that was not always against the likes of Greenard, Gink, Hargrave, Allen, and I think Cash or IP might have been in there as well. But Flo brought a pressure, just a simple pressure, playing man coverage, real tight, sticky coverage on the outside. And they were able to run a game up front and get home almost at the top of JJ's drop on the first one. And then, I think another time where there was, a chance to change the whole drill down the field with our secondary or primary, however you look at it, progression. And JG, that's why he's here. Call him the closer. How many times have we seen him win a one-on-one or even a help from the back or the tight end, and he just wins and ends the drill. We're not at full capacity with that O-line group right now, but there is zero excuse from a standpoint of, not being able to have the time to throw and compete, and that's what that drill is, kind of known passing. I thought the O-line showed some great physicality throughout the day in the run game, the play action pass protections, our different phases of our offense, but some games, as you guys know, many of ours, maybe coincidentally or not, many of ours come down to those one-score games. We're going to have to be great as a team situationally, but the defense clearly won that 2-minute, ones and twos yesterday.
So in JJ's case, there's nothing really he can do, and from your
yeah, he's gonna try to. When it's such an immediate, we call it immediate duress. Your job is to, sometimes you guys have heard me say this before. Sometimes the best thing you can do is, just fight through the down with the possession of the football. And not allow the defense to take that away.
So there is Kevin O'Connell talking about yesterday's struggles for the offense at the end of practice. And I think the big takeaway there is this defense is really nasty. And it is a real back and forth between Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell, a real conversation of how do you allow JJ McCarthy to get done what he needs to get done. I mean, you're not going to go over to Jonathan Greenard and say, excuse me, Mr. Greenard, could you just stop destroying the left tackle, please? Because we really need him to get, maybe you have to, I don't know, maybe you have to, but they have had a discussion about just how much you throw at McCarthy. And I think during some periods, they will move it back a little bit or dial it back a little bit. And then in some periods, they're going to let them go all out, because there will be times throughout this season that JJ McCarthy faces the Philadelphia Eagles D-line. And it's not going to be easy. And Detroit's D-line, they've got Aiden Hutchinson. That's not going to be that easy. And so you have to get used to that speed and that power coming at you. But in that particular one, there really was nothing he could do. And, that's what KOC is saying is it was probably better for him to just eat the ball and end the drill rather than just throwing it up in the air and seeing what happens. Speaking of Jonathan Greenard, something I mentioned to you guys over the last couple of days is that I felt like Greenard came into camp with something different about him. Not a different attitude. I mean, this is a pro's pro, somebody who always brings a competitive attitude, but I mean a different edge to him than he had last year. And I think when you get close and you win 14 games and you feel like you should be a Super Bowl contender, some people, I think, turn it up a notch and change the dial. And we're seeing that from Jonathan Greenard, the motivation in training camp. And so when I heard Kevin O'Connell talk about it today, I thought, okay, you know what? I am seeing what I thought I was seeing from Jonathan Greenard. So here's O'Connell.
It's Jonathan Greenard, and I don't know how many times you guys have talked to him yet early on here in camp, but he feels to have kind of there's he's turned it up a notch, and that's a Pro Bowl player, Pro Bowl starter from last year. Ginks the same way, and then you add in the likes of, Grave and J.A. inside, and you start to feel, in many ways, what we felt playing. I tell you guys every week that whether it's the edge guys or the interior guys, there's always things we have to focus on. But right now, you look across that board in that first group, and then you talk about Dallas Turner, what he adds to that group where we really feel like we've got three starters. Haven't even mentioned Harrison Phillips, where we feel like we've got those interior starters, some good young players, Ty Ingram Dawkins, Redmond, Levi. It's a chore, especially when you've got some linemen on the offensive side working their way back in. But yeah, I told JG if he wants to take the next month off, that's okay with me. We'll be ready to go.
Yeah, there you go. So Jonathan Greenard, his training camp has just been something different. And I think there is not only the motivation of where the team is at, but maybe the confidence from Jonathan Greenard. He starts out, in Houston with a couple years where there were injuries, there were setbacks. He's a rotational player. And then he shows he could be a double-digit sack guy, but still in more of a rotational role where he's not playing every snap than last year. It's actually, dude, you're a superstar, and played almost every single snap of every single game, and then comes back with wanting to even up that. I mean, that I think is the true sign of someone who is a franchise player in Jonathan Greenard, and also kind of speaks to the front office and the coaching staff. Like, it's hard to find a franchise player in free agency at that position, and yet they were able to do that with Greenard. So KOC's comments matching up with what I was feeling from Jonathan Greenard, like a different, kids are saying aura all the time. I felt a different aura from Jonathan. Okay, wide receivers. I had a chance to ask Kevin O'Connell about Lucky Jackson and that wide receiver group and his response to how they've stepped up over the last couple of days with Justin Jefferson sidelined. The journey of Lucky Jackson and where he's come from, starting out in the XFL, he was in the practice squad, and the way he stepped in for you the last couple of days.
Yeah, I think it shows a lot that he can step in for, in many ways, and take the positional reps that Justin will be taking. I think it says a lot about Key and Tony's trust in him, Wes, myself. But this is a guy that does everything the right way. Does everything the right way, doing everything in his control to become the best player he can become. Just happens to be in a very deep receiver room, but he's getting some opportunity right now for sure. I think Jalen Naylor's having a great camp. I showed the team 3 or 4 clips last night that can sometimes go unnoticed. Guys just doing their job in that inside position many cast of characters over the years have made real famous by just doing their job from the slot in this system. And Speedy's having a great camp, picking up right where he left off in the spring. But yeah, Lucky, Jayshon Jones is off to a really good start. We're seeing our young guys all be, taking strides, not making the same mistake twice. And Rondale is getting his legs underneath him and continues to do some things that really impress. So really fired up about that group as a whole.
Just find someone who loves you as much as KOC loves Jalen Naylor. He's talking about the depth wide receivers and just sort of circles it back to, actually, I've loved Jalen Naylor. And that has been one of I go back to, sometimes in June where we're just waiting for football to arrive. And I did my 50 bold predictions. I think one of them was that Jalen Naylor was going to catch 45 passes. First of all, because it feels like JJ McCarthy has already gained some trust with Naylor. But also, Kevin O'Connell has wanted to see his success, and he fits in really well into this team. And then you add in the possible suspension for Jordan Addison, and that's where Jalen Naylor is going to have an opportunity to step up. And it is important that he has been able to develop. But you're right, Sloth, in the comments that it almost sounded like he was comparing Jalen Naylor to Cooper Kupp, talking about the system. And, maybe we're not quite there yet with Naylor, but O'Connell's confidence in Naylor, we could go back, and I know that he's complimentary of a lot of players, but we could go back and say, well, who are the real bets that they've made over the years since KOC has gotten here, and how many have they been wrong on? And, Naylor, I think, proved him right last year after several years of banging the drum for Jalen Naylor. And then he showed that he could play as part of this offense and take over when Addison was out. And now it's that next step for Jalen Naylor to be a significant impact player on this team. So there you go. There's everything from practice today. So I'll get to your questions. I've also got a short Jonathan Allen conversation with the media, and then a longer discussion with Ahmad Hicks from Fox 9. We did 9 questions with Ahmad Hicks from Fox 9. Get it? You get the bit. It's very clever. So let us get some sights from training camp in here and get to some of your questions. We'll start right out with the super chat here from Michael. Says it's early, but hope we keep B-Flow for the long run. Fellow Brooklynite here. Still remember his high school alma mater frying my high school in a scrimmage. With Brian Flores, that discussion about, long-term and his contract, I've kind of put that a little bit to the side because the Vikings have been so good over the last few years at just getting these contracts done with guys when they need to get them done. And if they want to keep Flores long-term and he wants to be here, then I imagine something will get taken care of. It would be really surprising if he decided to try to hit the open market, considering all the talent he has, considering the environment that he has. And that's why I think this is one we can just wait on, and then we'll have that discussion if we have to have it. But Flores, this year is his year because he finally has all the pieces in place. When you go back to his first couple years, it's a lot of making, chicken salad out of chicken, what. I mean, not through the whole roster, but there's a lot of, hey, this position is just completely empty. What do we do with it? Well, let's just use an undrafted free agent, Ivan Pace, and then they get the most out of Ivan Pace. Or, hey, let's just, throw Jonathan Bullard in there for 700 snaps. And Jonathan Bullard gave them good snaps, and they were a top run defense. They've found ways to squeeze every ounce out of what they've had talent-wise. But this is the year that they finally have talent really at every single position. And even if you say, well, corner is questionable, think about the guys we're talking about. Blackman had a good run in 2023 and was a draft pick of Flores. And then Okuda is very talented. Whether he fully maximizes it or not, we're going to find out. But it's not like they're short on talent at those positions. And with the guy we never talk about, Byron Murphy, because he's just so solid, I mean, he's now one of the higher paid corners in the league for a reason. And that's the position we're talking about having the most concerns about. So Flores has everything that he needs here. And the only concern I guess I have at training camp is, will they call off the dogs a little bit sometimes because they have just been so nasty to an offensive line that is not 100%. And that's the other thing that I would say is a takeaway, is just that if this offensive line is not at 100% and Christian Darrisaw doesn't get back kind of off the start of the season, there could be some challenges there. And JJ McCarthy could have to scramble a little bit more, and he could have to get the ball out a little bit more. And what Brian Flores is showing him is this is what it's going to look like when you face an elite defense. Luckily for him, it probably isn't until week 4 that they are going to face a defense you would consider scary. Looks like Trey Hendrickson will probably get it figured out with Cincinnati, considering that he reported to Cincinnati today. But Atlanta drafted James Pierce and traded the farm for him. Chicago's got Montez Sweat. Everybody's got somebody, but these are not the nastiest teams in the league to start your season with. C Bakes 27. Do you think JJ's personality makes him a better fit for this current team than other members of his class? Not sure how the pressure of leading these veterans would affect May, Nix, Williams, etc. I don't really know that either because I'm not around those guys. I think that Caleb Williams probably would have had similar struggles no matter what to the struggles he's had right now in Chicago. I don't think it was the worst situation ever in Chicago with the team around him last year. And it was a lot of, oh, this guy's just not ready. And in a rational world, what would have been better for Caleb Williams is just not playing last year. If Caleb Williams had sat behind Sam Darnold for a whole year and then finally gotten in and was with KOC, I think it would be a different story than it was with him. Just, you got to be the Messiah. You have to be the savior. How many times did Caleb Williams have to hear that there have been 10,000 failed quarterbacks, in Chicago over and over and over and over and over, right? And then, hey, go save it at 21 years old. That was probably not a great situation for him to step into with all of that pressure. Drake May, I think that he would have needed some work too. Nix, I think, would have been fine. Nix played for Sean Payton. Nix would have been fine. And I think Penix would have been fine as well. Penix had to take over for a quarterback that they paid $100 million for and then had to bench. That situation was pretty pressure packed for Michael Penix, and he was in there trying to save a season. So I think most of the guys, it's a great draft class. And look, of course, Jaden Daniels would have been an instant superstar. It's a great draft class. And the fact that McCarthy is just right in the middle of that, I think that helps his case a little because it just shows you how good of prospects all those quarterbacks were last year. But as far as his personality goes, what I think he's a perfect fit for is, yes, I agree, like leading the veterans because he is mature and he does have a confidence to him. I think it's perfect for working with Kevin O'Connell because they're just both really good communicators, really, really good communicators. JJ McCarthy just connects with people extremely well. And just a small thing today after practice, you see him talking with fans, you see him talking with alumni and things like that. And it's always natural for him, which is the same way it is for Kevin O'Connell. Like if you wanted to introduce your friends to somebody and you cared about your friend's opinion, you'd love to have a guy like JJ McCarthy to introduce him to because he just communicates really well, represents himself really well. All that stuff fits for this situation. And then his ability to shrug off stuff, which is why I expect a good practice from him tomorrow. That is something that can carry him through a season that is going to have ups and downs, even if it's a great season. I shot you 99 says, heard McCarthy was really getting the heat today from the defense's pass rush. That was really yesterday that was happening. Today was shells, so the heat was not real. In pads, it's real. Did he look flustered like a rookie would experience in the NFL, or how the person who should not be named on the show panicked at any kind of pass rush? I'm referring to that last first-round draft pick from years ago who failed pretty quickly in the NFL for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't see Christian Ponder here because now I did not cover Christian Ponder, but from what I have understood about him from being here and then also just reading some of his interviews and after his career is that when things went wrong for Christian Ponder, he just could not pull himself out of it. And it's not only the pressure, but it was also, I think, the confidence that McCarthy has is just very different than Christian Ponder. And another part is just facts are facts. Like they reached on Christian Ponder. They didn't reach on JJ McCarthy. Like he was a first round caliber prospect. It wasn't, we got to get a quarterback. Let's draft the last one on the board. This was, they picked him over another guy who won 10 games and was in the playoffs last year. That's who they picked him over. So I think the pedigree is a little bit different. I think the arm talent is different from Christian Ponder. Ponder had good athleticism on paper, but didn't play that way. I think McCarthy will. So there's a lot of differences, but 2 years ago or in the draft, or I guess it would have been a year and a half ago in the draft. I just banned all discussion of Christian Ponder because a lot of Vikings fans are still wounded from that one. Digital Plains Media, if you had $100 to bet on McCarthy being a boom, a mid, or bust QB, how would you allocate the $100? I would probably there's something in between boom and mid. It would be where I would put the most, because I mean, boom, if you mean he becomes the next Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, I think that is an unlikely scenario, that he becomes a quarterback that is so good that he just, no matter what happens, he's always going to be able to put the team on his back because he's an absolute freak of nature. Like, I don't think that's in the cards, just based on what he physically has. I mean, he's not as fast as those guys. He's not as big as someone like Josh Allen, but I think there's a notch right below that I would put the most on for JJ McCarthy, is that you can win with him and you can compete for a Super Bowl with him if the team is as good as it needs to be, and if other things fall into place. So this would be the Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts, probably throw Jordan Love in there, Dak Prescott. Like, I think there's a tier of quarterback in the NFL that is really good and has often been paid a lot of money. And if everything is the way it needs to be, if you block well, if you play great defense, if you run the ball well, this guy can get it done. And I think where he stands out a little bit from some of these guys is just arm strength. Someone like Dak Prescott is very accurate, but might not have exactly the laser. And maybe McCarthy isn't quite as accurate, but has a little bit stronger arm. So I think what you're talking about is quarterbacks who are not built in a lab, perfect, flawless, absolute monster freaks that are all good enough to win. And then the character, the leadership, the clutch, the guiding the team through the hard moment, like all those types of things. That's where they are banking on JJ McCarthy. So that's where I would put the most. I wouldn't put much on bust, except for if something goes really wrong with health. Already by now, we've been around him long enough to know, yeah, that's not a bust. That's not somebody who's not going to be able to play in this league at all, like a Kellen Mond, because we're watching him compete against NFL players and play well in practice and play well in a preseason game with someone who was a bust like Kellen Mond. It was pretty clear right away that was just not going to work. All day 2884 says, the thing I loved today, after a couple of high balls, KOC talks to JJ in the next play. He hits Addison with a drag route and some touch for a touchdown. KOC smiles and shrugs at him like, I told you so. I'm guessing that you were out in camp, because he did have the one red zone touchdown. He also had a really nice throw to Addison over the middle. That chemistry is coming along pretty well. I just don't think that McCarthy gets very rattled, but what you're talking about is also the relationship that they have. KOC doesn't get rattled too easily either when it comes to coaching his quarterbacks. And I think his forever positive attitude early on, it was so stark from Mike Zimmer that I'm sure a lot of us, myself included, were like, is this going to work? Like, doesn't a football coach have to like tear people's, like, doesn't he have to rip people? Doesn't he have to be? I mean, there's not too many coaches that are this positive and this, I'm your guy and that kind of thing. But that's been Kevin O'Connell, and he backs it up with his coaching points and he backs it up with his scheme. But I think that he's the type of coach that McCarthy needs. Like, I think that he needs someone who communicates well with him, but also it's like me and you against the world kind of thing as a young quarterback in this situation. Now, 5 years from now, it might not matter who's his coach, but as a 22-year-old, no matter how much confidence you have, it's great to have somebody who can keep nudging you along at every corner, like Kevin O'Connell. That relationship is the most important thing to the franchise right now, for sure. Let's see. Yep. Scott says Fries pancaked someone. I heard it was, yes, Jonathan Harris, who he pancaked. And it was one of those, you're not really supposed to be that physical, but Will Fries decided that's not my rules today and smashed him to the ground. I'm excited to see an offensive line after all these years of just so much discussion about the guards not being physical enough, the guards being run over by bigger players. Will Fries is a mountain. I mean, we were talking just during practice. Is he the biggest guard that we can remember playing for the Vikings? And the only other guy was, I think, Phil Lodeholt played some guard, right? Or at least offensive lineman. Maybe Lodeholt never played guard, but just played tackle. But I mean, just in terms of the actual person's size and their height, he is enormous. So he's bringing a different element to this that I think is going to matter for them ultimately. All day 2884 says Fry's a monster. You could tell he wants to be great. Stayed for about 20 minutes working on footwork and handwork. So you were really taking notes all day today. But yeah, no, I mean, I think with Will Fries, you don't get paid $17 million for absolutely nothing. I mean, you get paid because they fully believe that you can be a game changer on the offensive line. So even though it's one play and it's practice, it does catch your attention as, oh, Mr. Fries is ready to go and he is here to play. And that's what we had today. First name, last name. I know it's only been a couple of weeks since you did your pre-camp 53-man prediction, but are there any players you feel like are playing themselves out of or into spots? That's a good question. I have to look at my 53. That's something I have not circled back on. Usually I do it again, I think maybe after the first preseason game and see if anything changed. I won't do it again if nothing has changed. Okay, I just called it up here. And let me screen share so you guys can see it as well. All right. There we go. Okay, let me take the question off. So let's make that big. There you go. So you guys can see that as well. I had Brosmer as the third quarterback with Sam Howell. I think the thing I would wonder about right now is Sam Howell actually going to be that guy? I am still in patience mode. I thought he played much better today, but still had some pretty rough moments. The underthrown interception wasn't great in the red zone with Sam Howell either. And I'm still going to go with Brosmer having a pretty good chance because I think that if they cut Brosmer, that somebody might pick him up that liked him coming out. That maybe they won't pick up Brett Rippin, but it's also possible that KOC finds a way to keep 4 quarterbacks because he wants more quarterbacks. Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, Ty Chandler, CJ Ham. I don't see anything different there, although I really do like what I've seen from Xavier Scott kind of randomly. As far as the wide receivers, as of right now, I might wonder about Tim Jones. Depends on him as a special teamer, but there could be room for someone like Silas Bolden to have a chance to get into the mix. So I'm not the most confident in that Tim Jones spot. Otherwise, that's what I would have. Tight end 3 as of right now would be Ben Urasek, not Gavin Bartholomew because he hasn't played. Offensive line, it's probably right the way I had it with Walter Rouse, Justin School, Blake Brandel, Michael Juergens. But that offensive swing tackle is up for grabs, I think. Defensive line looks probably pretty good. I don't know if right now Taki Taimani would make the roster. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Jalen Redmond have got most of the work. A lot of Tyrion Ingram Dawkins today. A lot of Dawkins today. Outside linebacker, this is an interesting one. I think right now it would be Bo Richter and Gabe Murphy, and that they would cut Tyler Batty. Richter is getting a lot more work. Asamoah is still a question, but I was watching the punt today, and I did notice that I'm in the corner. There we go. There's me in the corner. I did notice that Asamoah is still leading that group, punting. And if that's the case, he's going to be a key special teamer. So I don't think that they're going to cut him. McClendon, this is where I could see, this is my big change would be at corner. I would probably have Zamiah Vaughn and have them keeping 6 corners. And then I'm not sure who you cut instead. But right now, I mean, Zamiah Vaughn has played so much with the second team. I don't know how you could possibly, cut him. So there you go. The entire updated 53-man roster for you. But Vaughn is the one that I would put on the roster right now, and I would have to figure out who's going to go instead. Let's see. Richard said, "Have you been looking at how much they are coming out in 12 personnel and under center comparatively to the past?" Quite a bit. Yeah, quite a bit for both of those things. Comparing it to the past is a little tough because I think that they've done it a lot. I remember looking at Sam Darnold's numbers under center last year, and he was under center a lot. And they're going to play Josh Oliver pretty often as well. Oliver is a key weapon for them. And that's something that benefits JJ McCarthy. It really does. From playing at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, there are very few colleges that put anybody under center. So a lot of times, these quarterbacks come out and they have to do it for the first time, where McCarthy, he looks really comfortable under center. And that's why I was talking about that play action and just how they have done really well on these play action crossers. And I think it's in part because that's stuff that he's always run. Nick says, speaking of Fries and Ryan, I assume you mean Ryan Kelly, I'll be curious how quickly they come to love US Bank Stadium, given the experience the last two times they played in the building. Yeah, not so great for either one of them. That's a good point. That what it was the comeback game. I saw a little kid with a shirt on that said something about the comeback game. So the comeback game, and then last year where they more or less got bludgeoned. You're right about that. I'm sure they'll enjoy being on the right side. And just this franchise is in a different spot than Indianapolis, which seems very much up in the air. So, funny boy Roddy says Hutchinson won't come near JJ McCarthy with our new dynamic offensive line. Well, Aiden Hutchinson is one of the best players in the entire league, so I think he's still going to get his shots at it. The point is, they're going to have a much better offensive line overall. And when Darrisaw comes back, it might take some time for him and Donovan Jackson to work together. But if we go across the line, I mean, Darrisaw is going to be coming back from an ACL injury. Donovan Jackson's a rookie. Ryan Kelly's been banged up. Will Fries is coming back from an injury. So it's not exactly flawless to start the season, and it might take some time. And that's why the schedule does kind of matter when it comes to not facing three of the toughest teams in the league. But by the time you get over to Dublin and then over to London, where you're going against TJ Watt and you're going against Myles Garrett, they better have a complete offensive line at that point, or that could be a problem for them. And I think what we're seeing is if the backups have to play, then you're probably going to have some problems there. Son of a Beavers, any news on Gavin Bartholomew? This time on PUP list seems like he's going to be hurting his chances for the 53. There hasn't been an update on him. There was an update on Isaiah Rodgers, if I didn't say that. He just has some soreness, I guess, and is going to be fine, so there's no issue there. But as far as Bartholomew, there hasn't been an update on him, and it just sort of seems like out of sight, out of mind at the moment, and we'll see when he comes back. But a back injury can be a little bit on the difficult side to come back from, and that's what he's struggling with. But yeah, I mean, if you can't get out there and Ben Urasek is playing well and making catches like he did today, then that's going to be your tight end 3. Bartholomew was only drafted in the 6th. There was one time where this team, not with KOC, but a previous regime with Zimmer, they cut a 6th round pick before the end of camp. They were just like, yeah, it's not going to work out. So if you're a 6th round pick, I mean, your chances already are kind of low, but then if you miss a lot of camp, then it does hurt your chances to make the team. Unless it's a long-term injury, then you're talking IR and all that sort of stuff. But this tight end 3 battle that we all got into discussing a lot in the offseason just has not come to fruition. It's been Urasek. Bryson Nesbitt had one good catch and one clear drop. It's kind of been who he's been early on and in minicamp. So it's really, the kid from Georgia at this moment. Digital Plains Media says, sounds like Ben Johnson has been very vocal, practically screaming at Caleb Williams. Have you ever seen KOC do that? No, I have not. I don't think that's how he coaches, and he definitely doesn't coach that way in front of the media and the fans. One of the things that is so interesting about Kevin O'Connell is how his philosophy seems to have been shaped by his history, where I don't think Kevin O'Connell liked the way he was treated by some coaches and by some front office people throughout his career. And he's gone out of his way to not repeat those same things to players. And it's one of the reasons he gets graded so high in the NFLPA survey time and time again, is because I think he treats all these guys like they're pros. And I'll just even give you an example, is that practice that I remember so well with Kellen Mond. And it's unfortunate how often his name comes up, but just the guy who couldn't do it at the NFL level. And he got one practice where he was QB1 when Kirk Cousins was out with COVID. And it was a miserable, horrendous, awful practice. The worst one I think I've ever seen since I've been covering the team. And O'Connell spent probably 15 minutes after that practice with Mond talking with him, but talking with him man to man, one on one, not screaming at him throughout the practice, not kind of pantsing him in front of the rest of the team or mocking him or making fun of him or whatever it was in front of everybody. It was after the practice and they took him off kind of to the side and just had this really long conversation. And, who knows what exactly was said there. And I'm sure it wasn't always the most encouraging or kind words. I'm sure there was some frustration shown there by the head coach. But it was probably also a lot of coaching points and a lot of like, here's what you need to do in order to actually play in football games. And that seems to be his approach. And that's why when I see some of the stuff from Ben Johnson, I just don't think that anybody has ever really enjoyed being berated. You could say, oh, it's a soft generation and they don't want to be. I don't know that anybody ever loved being screamed at or ever felt like, you know what, the reason I really got better is instead of this coach telling me what I needed to do, he just insulted me. Like, I don't think that ever worked. I think people just overcame that. One example is Drew Bledsoe in his football life talked about how much he struggled with Bill Parcells early on because Bill would just insult him all the time. And it was frustrating. It was harder to learn for him. And I think being respectful along with coaching at the same time is very possible. But some of these guys are not wired that way. Not every, I mean, this is just kind of an old joke, is that football people are not well adjusted. Well, that is true. And a lot of the guys are kind of nuts. And they spend a lot of time in front of their computers breaking down film and not a lot of time with other people learning how to interact with society. Or do they take management courses in college? Probably not, right? Football. And are they really prepared? And this is what I wonder about Ben Johnson. Are you really prepared to take on an entire $5 billion organization and all the people underneath you because you're the guy? And this is why Mike Zimmer had to go, honestly. Like, Mike Zimmer was just a bad representative of the franchise by the end. Not always, but definitely by the end. Kevin O'Connell, you could make him the CEO of any company and you'd feel very happy with it, with the way that he's able to be the front door to your franchise and also the way that he treats people. And I think it's an edge. I think it's a legitimate edge for him that he's not insane. Or at least insane in the same way. And look, I don't know what's going to happen with Ben Johnson, but it's got red warning lights on it from the early signs of training camp. C. Lair says it might be challenging to truly assess Donovan Jackson given Darrisaw is out and Kelly being in and out with vet days. But how does he seem to be acclimating? He seems to be getting whipped by really, really awesome players and not getting too down about that and trying to make progress. One thing that I noticed about Donovan Jackson is I think that he's a fairly easygoing type of person, and he is a very, very intelligent guy. And I think that he's going to play this, he's going to be physical and he's got great physical traits, but I think he's going to approach this in a very analytical type of mind, which matches up really well with Ryan Kelly, who understands this game inside and out. And I think where it's going to be good for him is to have Ryan Kelly to go through some of the ups and downs. And Kelly was pointing it out the other day when I asked him about Donovan Jackson. And he just said, look, I mean, he's just got to learn the details. And that's the biggest thing. Just has to learn the details. And if he can be where he's supposed to be, then he can succeed. But when you are going against Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, there's going to be some looks on tape or in practice that we see where we go, oh boy, that was a rookie type of moment. So far, I wouldn't say that it's been really rough or anything, but we've also only seen the one padded practice. Tomorrow, I think, is a big day for him because he got whipped the other day. Everybody got whipped the other day on the O-line. How do you come back? It's not just one guy. It's not just JJ McCarthy, who is the only guy who needs to learn how to bounce back. It's kind of everybody who needs to learn how to bounce back. Let's see here. Go to Rob. Every young player, I mean, the veterans already know. Rob says, I think KOC is going to have some serious fun drawing up plays on napkins for Rondale. Has KOC ever had a guy with that sort of short area quickness before? I don't think you probably don't count someone like Brandon Powell as that. I think Rondale is a little bit more explosive. Rondale has to get to the point where he can play complete wide receiver and then have stuff like that get put in. And he's looked to me like he's done pretty well at going downfield because a lot of the routes he's running are downfield. He is not just getting bubble screens and that's it. That's something that he has to prove over this training camp and into preseason is that he can do more than just be that guy. I do think that you're right, and you make a good point that he brings a dynamic that is different than what we've seen before on this roster. There hasn't been that short area quickness guy that, hey, you need a 7-yard quick out. Hey, you need a bubble screen. Hey, you need a sweep or something. And Ty Felton might bring that a little bit as well. But what I'm seeing in training camp practice, and he's done a pretty good job at this, is Rondale's running the route tree. He's really a complete wide receiver right now. And I don't think that they'll keep him or play him unless they really trust that he can do that. But he's got a chance to be the guy. Lucky Jackson is in right now, but he's got a chance to be that guy with Justin Jefferson out. Speaking of which, let me bring you this. And I know I'm behind in the chat on questions, but just an interesting comment from Kevin O'Connell about Justin Jefferson. Because if you're wondering, Jefferson is out there and he is giving his feedback to his teammates, some good and then sometimes just encouraging during bad moments. He's out there throwing footballs around. Like he is a serious part of practice out there, even though he is not playing. And Kevin O'Connell talked about that.
Justin wants to be out here, be around, wants to be present with his teammates, and not just the receiver group, the offense. When the 2-minute didn't go well, it didn't go as the way you want offensively. I heard him, not in a negative way, but just, hey, we know we got to be better than that. We'll get another chance here in a couple days. And that was my challenge to him is there's a lot of ways we can maximize this time as one of our captains, a guy that sets the tone in this building, and he is knocking it out of the park. Rehab's going really well, already progressing. So, could end up being a blessing, in disguise in a lot of ways where, Justin's mentally preparing and engaging with his teammates. He's completely present every single day. But at the same time, we're going to we're trying to build him up for 17 plus games. And, just very fortunate we were able to get out in front of things the way we were.
Last couple. Did you lobby to call a play?
I've actually let him call a few of the short ones into the quarterbacks, which then immediately he complained about how long the play was, and the quarterbacks complained that they didn't quite understand some of the Louisiana terms.
Kevin O'Connell out there, and that's a way to keep it light, right? Is let Justin Jefferson call a play real quick. I mean, I guess that's the kind of training camp that Kevin O'Connell runs, right? It is not this death camp where it's every single moment is super serious. In fact, I saw O'Connell, and it might be on the video somewhere that I took today. I saw O'Connell trying to prove, is this the one? Can you see it? Where he's trying to show that he can juggle. I think that it's there somewhere, or maybe there it is. You can kind of see it. Let me see if I can make it full screen here. It's kind of in the middle where O'Connell, I'm going to pull it back, is trying to show Justin Jefferson that he can juggle. And again, like this is the way that this man is there. You can kind of see it in the middle there. That's the Kevin O'Connell training camp. And I'm not saying that it's Club Med and that it's all fun and games. It certainly was not for the players of the first padded practice. It was very serious and it was very aggressive and everything, but he just has little ways of doing this, and letting Justin Jefferson try to call play is one of them. Nick says, do we have depth? How about Okuda? Is he figuring out zone, like how he's being used? With only 1 day of padded practice in the books, I'm going to say it's a little bit hard to say on Okuda yet so far. He definitely has the physical traits. He definitely has the length and the size. And O'Connell pointed out on one particular play how he's using that size at rerouting someone. This is one of those things that it's got to be an accumulation of 10 practices altogether or more than that, and maybe preseason. And then we get a sample size like we did last year with, Caleb Evans had a few good practices. There was even a day where I thought Andrew Booth might make the team. But as the targets go on, do you continue to play well, or do we start to see some of that crumble a little bit and some issues? That's what we're going to find out with Jeff Okuda. I think he's looked fine so far. I think he's looked like a starting cornerback in the league, but that's not with a big sample size so far. Susan says Albert Breer's report after visiting with KOC was that the Vikings actually see their cornerback room as a strength. Right. I think the thing with that, Susan, that we were talking about so much in the offseason is, well, what is Isaiah Rodgers really? And he's looked really good. What is Jeff Okuda really? He hasn't had a sample size of playing well in the league. And we didn't know, would Zamiah Vaughn actually, as an undrafted free agent, make some noise? And would Dwight McClendon carry over, which he's made some plays over the last few days? I think that they go fairly deep in this group. But when you're talking about Rodgers having not been a starter before, and when you're talking about a guy like Okuda who hasn't had success in the league, and then behind him is Blackman, who's only played 400 something snaps, like there's just a lot of questions there. These are all guys they like. I mean, they went out of their way to get Okuda. They went out of their way to draft Mekhi Blackman. So it's guys that they like, but is it enough to go 17 games with a lot of really good quarterbacks, a lot of really good receivers, a lot of really good offenses? So they do have more depth than probably they're getting credit for, because we didn't know that Vaughn was going to take this, big step forward. But we also, you think that there's a scenario where this works out really well for them. And that really starts with Isaiah Rodgers to me. Isaiah Rodgers is going to be the main reason it works or it doesn't. So far, he's looked really good. But if he is just okay and not all that good, then it's going to have some weaknesses there. Theo Jackson plays into that. How Josh Metellus is used plays into that. So there's a lot of moving parts that have to click into place for the secondary to be great. You know what helps that is the defensive line just destroying the quarterback. That certainly helps. Steven says the race for the coveted Mr. Mankato Award is heating up. Urasek, Vaughn, Jashawn Jones. I wouldn't put Logan Brown in there just because I don't think an offensive lineman has ever won it. Brosmer has a chance. Yeah. Bo Richter is ineligible, and Kobe King. Yeah. Bo Richter was on the team last year and he played in real games, so he's not eligible. Kobe King, maybe. It's going to have to be preseason plays for him. Right now, for me, it would be easy. It would be Zamiah Vaughn because he's getting those second team reps. He's having a really good training camp, mini camp. And you could just imagine going into these preseason games. And that dictates a lot of it too, is how do you play in the preseason games as those competitors for Mr. Mankato. But Urasek's got a chance. You score a couple touchdowns, and I could definitely see Jashawn Jones getting a lot of action when it comes to the preseason as someone who is consistently in the right place and catches the ball well. I would put him there. Yep. Jacob says, just heard the music sample on the podcast the other day. Thank you. I had to prove the doubters wrong that I could actually, let it rip on the guitar. It was awesome. Oh, thank you. And can hear the Metallica influence. Do you have music over on YouTube? Yeah, I do. Just on kind of a old burner account. If anybody wants to hear it, let me even find, it's just like my name and some random numbers. So let me see if I can find it real quick, and then we'll get back to all that. It's Matthew Coller 702. If you want, there is a 4-track little EP that I made with a producer who's from Minnesota, is a Vikings fan, and we did it together. So that was kind of cool. But thank you. I'm glad that I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Yeah. So there's a couple songs there of me jamming out. Jason says, we're good with JJ. He is nowhere near Christian Ponder. Well, I didn't cover Christian Ponder, so I didn't see what he looked like in training camp, but I did see Christian Ponder games along with the rest of you. And I've even gone back and looked at a few Christian Ponder games. There just was not a confidence of him out there. It looked like he had physical skill, but also was just very inaccurate, kind of all over the place, erratic, would have his moments. But no, I don't think there's no reason to bring him up. Like already we're past all that. Already, I think we're at the point of the difference between being a really good quarterback and a really, really good quarterback and a great quarterback is small. And I don't know where that's going to land for him. With this group and with his performance so far over now a big sample of last year's training camp and this year's training camp, the sample is big enough to be very confident that he can play in the league and that he can move the offense and that he can make throws and that he's not going to give up and that he's going to lead the team. Like there's a lot of boxes checked so far. It's just the difference is tiny. It's 2 or 3 throws a game. If you hit them, you're Drew Brees. If you don't hit them, you're, I don't know, Tua or you're Jordan Love or you're Eli Manning or something, right? Like it's sort of like I say about offensive linemen. If you allow 1 pressure a game, you're a superstar. 2, you're a good player. And 3, you're out on your butt or you're a backup. And 4, you don't play in this league. The differences are very small. And I love those golf analogies. I mean, think about if you shoot a 70 versus a 65, that's 5 shots over 18 holes. It's kind of that way for playing quarterback. It's 5 throws over 100 that do you make them or do you not? It's 5 moments in a season. I think about the 5 moments in a season that can define a quarterback and define how far their team goes. And so that trying to figure that out from camp is really hard. But we've already figured out, I think, a lot about JJ McCarthy. And my expectation is that tomorrow he will take a poor practice and then turn it into a good practice. Son of Beavers did not see Max Brosmer do much today. A couple throws in the red zone. I think we're at the point with Max Brosmer where when he gets in, he seems to know what he's doing and he could throw the ball pretty well. And how this plays out for QB3 is probably going to be much more on preseason performance because he should, I would think he should get a decent amount of reps in the second half along with Brett Rippon. But I don't need to see Brett Rippon. I mean, we know what he is. He's been in the league for long enough. I'd much rather see Max Brosmer. Seldom Seen says, what will doom a young quarterback more? Not knowing where you want to go with the ball or not having the arm talent to get it there. Oh, clearly the first one would be much, much worse. I mean, there's been a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL who have not had great arms, and McCarthy has a really good arm. So, he's already a percentage of the way there, but there's been a lot of quarterbacks in the league that don't have great arms. Tua and Brock Purdy are 2 quarterbacks with huge contracts that do not have lasers, and they've won a lot of football games. They put up a lot of big stats. Knowing where to go with the ball, running the offense properly is going to get you a very long way. I mean, even so, Jared Goff has a big arm. He's number 1 overall pick. But Jared Goff, to me, is the ultimate example of just a great decision maker with the ball and how far that gets you if you execute an offense. People use it against him. Oh, all he does is just, run the plays properly and throw to the right people. He doesn't wow me. And you're like, well, this isn't the wow football league, right? This is not the trick shot league. It's not Harlem Globetrotters. This is win the game. And if JJ McCarthy could do a lot of that and then add in a sprinkle of a play here or a play there, that when the pocket breaks down, he steps up, he scrambles, he makes a play. You could get a long way with that, especially when you have a defense that's this good, which we can't understate. So, and this is exactly what A.A. Braun is saying, which an above average quarterback on a rookie scale contract can lead a great team to the Super Bowl. We see it all. Yeah, we've seen it all the time in the last 10 years. You are certainly right about that. Goofstar123 says, could Brosmer actually compete for QB2 considering the struggles Howell has had so far? I don't believe so. I think Brosmer would have to be unbelievable to compete for QB2. But if he gets QB3, then he could be QB2 next year. That's realistic to me. I think Howell has gotten a little better over the last 2 practices. I mean, the first couple were an absolute nightmare, but a little bit better today, getting the ball out better today. And the next step and next step and next step either are going to come or they're not. And when did they trade for Nick Mullins? I think it was after maybe the second or third preseason game. Could have been the second preseason game that they decided to pull the ripcord on the Kellen Mond and Sean Mannion experience and decide to go with Nick Mullins. Give him a little bit more time, and we're going to find out, does he look like someone who could be a backup quarterback or not? Early on, I would say make phone calls, but we also have to see him get acclimated to the offense. There have been much better quarterbacks than him, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, who needed time. And he just got here after the draft. It wasn't like JJ, who had the entire offense installed in his brain last year. So that's where I stand on that. I don't think that an undrafted free agent who only, he played good competition, but, played at Minnesota. It's not like we're talking about somebody who threw for, 45 touchdowns. It was a second round draft pick or something. It's, this is a young quarterback. I think they do need someone with experience playing to be the backup. Whether that's Howell or somebody else is up to Sam Howell. Nick, it's only been 6 practices, but what is the aura this year? I honestly think so. You can mix or match aura, vibes, whatever you want to use. I think the vibes are great so far. I mean, I really do. And that's judging by, how players are talking to us, how Kevin O'Connell, I mean, you saw Kevin O'Connell in those clips that I played. That doesn't look like a man who's concerned about his vibes right now. It looks like a man who's pretty happy with his vibes. And as much as he was probably frustrated or a little irritated with the end of yesterday's practice, and maybe even somewhat today, but yesterday's practice with the pads at the end, because his offense didn't do anything. I mean, I'm sure he's looking at that D-line being like, that's going to be nice. And he made a joke about it. He said, like, for the Minnesota Vikings, that's good. And it is good. I think what O'Connell is realizing, and these players realize, and you see it, you hear it in their comments, you see it in their face, there's a lot of talent on this field. And when they go up against it and they see it and they look around, these guys aren't dumb. I mean, they know whether it's a good team or not. A lot of these guys have been on lots of different teams. They know how much talent is here. And you can really feel that. Plus, as I mentioned, I mean, I got the video of O'Connell trying to juggle. Like, that's where they're at right now. I think the vibes are very good. It also tells me that they are definitely not concerned about Justin Jefferson or his health with the mild hamstring, which maybe if this is week 16 to win the division, he just plays through pretty easily, right? But as far as vibes go, and that's why my confidence at this moment, and it can always change or waver depending on new information, would be very high that they're competing for the NFC North just based on 6 practices. Again, all things come with the subject to change asterisk. All right, one more question, then I want to give you a quick Jonathan Allen conversation with the media. Hamza says, is it fair to say that Will Fries is the best Vikings guard since Steve Hutchinson was on the team? Probably not saying much because the Vikings guard have been so bad for the last decade. Who is the best in between? I think it would have to be either Nick Easton or Joe Berger. The year Joe Berger played guard was 17. He was very good that year. And then he retired. And that was it. That was the last time, because I don't think they've had anyone. Josh Klein played pretty well in 2019. Wasn't great, but played well and had some injuries. Aside from that, Blake Brandel's first half of the season was one of the best that we've seen from anybody in a long time at that position. You're right. Yeah, I think Will Fries is actually a physical difference maker. Is he going to be perfect in pass protection? His history says no, he's not going to be a flaw. He's not going to be Steve Hutchinson, who's one of the greatest of all time. But is he going to bring a little nasty that Steve Hutchinson brings or brought to this franchise? Yeah, I see that. And that's why they decided to go out and pay him what they paid him. That was right there. Will Fries today slamming somebody into the ground, just like introducing himself. Hey, I'm here. I'm in the lineup. That's also a JJ McCarthy thing too, because without JJ McCarthy's contract, you just can't spend that much on a guard. And all those years we complained about the guards, I thought there was some bad process mixed in getting them. But I also thought that it related back to the quarterback. It was kind of if we could only find the person who was responsible for having these bad guards. Okay, I'll get back to your questions momentarily, but first, Jonathan Allen, and unfortunately, there's an AC. It was super hot today. There's an AC unit out there right where we do a lot of, I'm sure you guys have heard it, the press conferences and stuff where it turns on and it makes this crazy loud sound. So it's in front of the AC unit. So I hope the audio is okay for you. But I had a chance to ask him a couple questions, including just the 3-4 versus 4-3 defense. And I think this team is really going to play a 3-4 at times, like a true 3-4 old school Pittsburgh Steelers style type of looks, which you don't see around the league very much. So here is Jonathan Allen.
And us as a team, but it's exciting. I mean, we have a lot of great players from top to bottom, and it's going to be fun.
Especially guys that have been here before. How have they been able to kind of learn and use those stunts? And I know he changes it from year to year anyway.
It's been fun. I've been leaning on everybody from the top to the bottom, to the vets, to the rookies, to everyone who's been here. I can learn a lot from everybody, so I've been kind of leaning on the entire group. HP obviously has been awesome. JG, Ging, Dallas Turner, they all been awesome, so it's been fun.
I know KO was saying, hey, listen, we have to balance it out. We want to kind of throw our best at these guys, but we also don't want to hurt each other. What have you seen from the offense that they've been throwing at you so far, specifically like maybe JJ's?
Yeah, definitely a physical group. JJ has been working hard, and it's been competing. It's been a battle. Still super early, I'm still trying to get my foot in defensively, but it's been a good battle back and forth.
It's funny to hear you say you're trying to get your foot in defensively when they think you're a beast up front, right? Because your name kind of and your play before you comes before you.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely something that I'm proud of, the things I've done, but, new team, and, I'm trying to go out here and every day and, prove them right for trusting me to bring me in and to do what I can to help this organization win.
What has been maybe the hardest transition? Is it just the verbiage and all that stuff?
It's kind of hard because this is my first time doing it, first time being on a new team, so I kind of don't know what I don't know, you know what I mean? It's my first time going through all of this stuff, so I don't know what's different here than other places. So for me, it's just trying to take it day by day, not get too frustrated when I don't feel like things are clicking as fast as I want them to, and understand that it's going to take time to, get acclimated, but just going out there every day, working to improve, and, seeing how I can help this team win.
What's the biggest key in syncing how you guys can play off each other? Like, I does this move a certain way, and you do it yours a certain way?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say it's communication. Knowing some of the guys around the league, even before I got here, I already know how, Javon Hargrave likes to rush and how JG likes to rush. So I think we've done a good job of trying to communicate before practice, during practice, talk about what they like and what I like, and, just being a pro's pro and just working off each other.
How much does having Harrison Phillips here, being such a great communicator that he is, how much has that helped you?
Oh my gosh, it's invaluable. Like, just his ability to help on the field, off the field, any questions I have, just everything. Every team wants a guy like him.
You mentioned JG. His motor doesn't stop, right? And he talks a lot out there too. What have you appreciated about from what you've seen from him on the field as a teammate now?
Just the energy. I love the energy, man. When you have guys like that who bring great energy, it makes coming to work just that much more fun every single day.
What is the difference between playing in a 3-4 versus 4-3 base?
3-4 base, you're definitely more react and then attack. But I mean, it's really hard to say what scheme we run here. We run so many different schemes. One day is 3-4, the other day is 4-3. I mean, everyone knows Coach Flo is a mastermind when it comes to that, and an evil genius, so he's definitely going to have a lot on our plate, but I think that's what makes this team versatile.
Have you played in any defenses before that moved things around so much? There's so many moving parts on a given play?
Not as much as here. Definitely not even close.
I was going to ask you, do you enjoy the shell game where he's always moving things around, moving guys in positions around?
I love it. Always, it keeps me on my toes for sure, and as I get older in this league, that's always a welcomed feeling.
It sounds like Harrison Smith.
Yeah.
That's what he says. Yeah, okay.
Are you?
There you go. Jonathan Allen there, talking about how it's a little different, 3-4, 4-3, but, he makes a point that every single play is going to be a little bit different in a Brian Flores defense. Let's get back to your questions. Actually, let me bring in some video for questions here. Son of Beaver says, how are the UDFA O linemen doing? Logan Brown and Joe Huber, the ones I have my eye on. I do too, but everybody was getting killed the other day. I mean, look, it's a really good backup defensive line too, because if I take you across the backup defensive line, it's Dallas Turner taking a lot of reps, and he's been crushing the second team. And then Levi Drake Rodriguez and Jalen Redmond. Redmond was playing against starters last year, and he's doing fine, if not really well. And then Gabriel Murphy had a nice pressure today. He's another guy that they were very excited about. And you mix in Bo Richter as well. He has some experience. I think it's not an easy task for these undrafted guys who just arrived. A little bit concerning that Logan Brown was not practicing today because when you're an undrafted free agent, you just can't miss too many days. So we'll see if he gets back out there soon. But it'll be a lot easier to evaluate those guys in the preseason than it is in practice, especially when they're running twos versus ones. That's a nightmare for those guys who are young. Preston says, sticking with the theme, how has Walter Rouse looked so far? Sorry if you covered that already. No, I haven't covered that with Walter Rouse. It looks like there is a competition between Rouse and Logan Brown for who's going to be that backup developing tackle. Like Justin School is going to be the guy who is the swing tackle, and then it's either going to be Brown or Rouse. Right now, I would give Rouse the edge because he's got more experience and he looked good in training camp last year. But when they get into these preseason games, that's going to tell us a lot because you are going up against somebody else. And then the competition against the Patriots when they're playing in the joint practices, that is going to dictate it as well. But, you know, the preseason games, sometimes we talk about them like, well, you know, you're not getting the starters in there, so the game doesn't really matter. But for those types of competitions, I actually think this year with preseason games, there's a lot of those competitions that are going to be decided. The punt returner, the kick returner, the final wide receiver spot, some of the depth positions on defense, maybe even the depth corner position, all could get an edge when it comes to the preseason games. Shane's World says, how has Darrisaw looked in practice? Well, he hasn't been able to do like the full practicing. So it's just kind of working on the side, doing some drills, things like that. But I mean, looks like he's on his way back. Everything that Kevin O'Connell has said is that he's on point for his return date, that everything is on kind of on track at this moment. But when he actually returns, and you're going to hear a little later in the show, Ahmad Hicks talked about that, that he's maybe thinking it will take into the season a couple of weeks, but hard to say exactly right now. Just the fact that he's out there and he's doing stuff and he's coming along is a good sign for Christian Darrisaw. And we'll have to ask really Kevin O'Connell for an update on that one. We'll maybe the next time we talk with him. Okay, let me continue to scroll here. Conrad said, did anyone mention when Justin Jefferson was going to return? I actually think his little pause by Jefferson has been beneficial to the other receivers, giving them some much needed repetitions. Yeah, I mean, Kevin O'Connell has not seemed at all concerned about this hamstring strain, and neither has Justin Jefferson, who is kind of jogging around out there, big smile on his face, locked into every play, though, and there for moral support as well, but has not looked like someone who's concerned at all about their return. And when Kevin O'Connell was asked about his return during training camp, he kind of said like, oh yeah. As far as like, oh yeah, he'll be back. And then didn't really give exactly what kind of date we're looking at. And maybe doesn't want to pressure Jefferson to come back too soon. But I agree with you in general that Jefferson being out is not a bad thing for the first couple weeks of camp. Now, if it goes on, then yes, it becomes a bad thing and a concern. But when we're doing this right here, where guys are just getting acclimated and they have to lay the foundation for the roster and who they're going to go with those depth wide receivers, it's not a bad thing to get more looks at Lucky Jackson, more looks at Rondale Moore, more looks at Jayshon Jones. I mean, these are guys that they've liked over the years, but very hard to get into the actual competition because of, the top three have been so good. Seldom seen. How does Kobe King look so far in coverage? Sounds like he would have been drafted higher if he was better in this area. Kobe King is a big dude who moves really well for his size. If you're trying to project it, like I haven't focused on him, just him and how he's covered anyone. And I think he's probably playing in a lot of zones at the moment. But if you're trying to project based on how he moves, his size, I think it's going to be hard for him to cover anybody one-on-one. Now, can he use his intelligence to get back into zones, and can they use deception? I think eventually, yes. he's going to have to learn from that. For his first year, though, he's going to be down on the depth chart, and he's going to have to learn from someone like Eric Wilson. And then maybe he becomes an Eric Wilson in this league, where Wilson is a little quicker and probably isn't, as tough against the run as someone like Kobe King will be. But that veteran backup linebacker that Wilson has become, maybe Kobe King is that, or maybe he's a guy that eventually they want to use in some run situations, like a Ben Gideon type. That's just not super likely to happen right away for somebody who was drafted, in the later rounds. I think if he wants to become a difference maker, it's got to start on special teams, and then we'll see if he can become a zone linebacker, if he can have enough quickness to cover some areas. But he's never going to be a guy that you want one-on-one with a tight end, one-on-one with a quick running back or a slot receiver, something like that. I think he's just probably too big for that. So he may end up just being kind of a run stuffer and a special teams leader and have a long career that way. That's how he projects to me right now. Packers suck says, anything new on Theo Jackson? Haven't heard anything about him lately. Theo came very, very close to picking off a pass that was actually caught by Lucky Jackson. Lucky versus Theo. Theo came very close to picking it off. Instead, Lucky ended up making a catch and running with it on the first day of pads. Theo looks to me like he fits the bill. And it's not his first time. It's not his first year here. It's not his first camp where he was excellent last year. He's playing mostly in dime situations, and he's gotten a lot of work these last couple of days without Metellus, and then a veteran day today for Harrison Smith. I think they really want Theo Jackson to get a lot of work. Also seen a lot of Jay Ward, and I think Jay Ward has looked really good thus far. So that depth at safety is pretty solid. But Theo, I mean, he's always in the right spot. That's the biggest thing, and why they like him so much is that he's just always, always, always in the right position. And that's why he ends up making plays all the time, because he's in the right spot constantly. So I think Theo looks like he should be there, but he's not going to be on the field for every play. That was something we really wondered about going into this camp. Is he going to be there for every play? Is he going to be the new Cam Bynum? And as of right now, it looks like he's going to be in the dime package. And so when there's 6 defensive backs, that's when Theo comes on the field. And that's how it's going to work for, I think, all parts of this defense. Is it's going to be kind of package based, where, all right, this is one where every D lineman is on the field. This is where only Allen in. This is where only Hargrave's in. This is where Dallas Turner fits in. This is where, and in the past, it's been a little bit of that, but it hasn't been enough because they just didn't have the dudes for it to be enough. Where this year, I think that we can sort of see the full breadth of what Brian Flores wants to do. Thank you so much to DMD2652 for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Thank you. And I am thrilled to be bringing you training camp updates every single day here. During that off season, get a little antsy. Like, let's get to the football. And you know what? It's been real nice. It's been real nice to go out there and watch football practices. It sure has. All right, let me scroll here. More conversation with Caleb Williams. Anthony says biggest red flag for the Bears is that they're breaking Caleb into systems instead of making a system for Caleb. He will put Caleb under center, and it's going to be ugly with our tackles. Oh, yeah. I mean, it looks like Ben Johnson wants to play Ben Johnson's system that worked for Jared Goff, and that is what sounds concerning. But at the same time, and I know like a lot of you really want this not to work, and that, of course, that's where you should be with it. And there are some red flags early on, but I would say too that Caleb Williams just didn't play in any type of system last year. It was a lot of screen pass or run around, and that seemed to be the only two options. And maybe there does have to be a little bit more of a iron fist from the coach to push Caleb Williams to really play within a system. Because if you think about it, when you look at someone like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, PFF had this stat a couple years ago of how often do they throw to their first read, I think it was. And these are the best playmaking quarterbacks in the league. How often do they throw to their first read? And maybe you might say, well, I don't know, like 25, 30%. Like they go through all their reads and, it was more like 60 to 70%. Like this is a first read league. It's not a flag football league where you're just running around and doing whatever. And sorry, no disrespect to the flag football Olympians. I mean, like me and your friends out back. This is, you have to play within the structure of an offense, no matter who you are. Because how is anybody, you saw what happened to Anthony Richardson, right? The guy got so exhausted, he had to take himself out of the freaking field. I mean, but that's what happens when you try to make it up on every play. You saw it from Caleb Williams laying on the bench last year against the Vikings. If you try to just run around all the time, you are going to wear yourself down. You're going to take huge hits. And also, guys in this league can cover for longer amounts of time. It's not like you could just scramble around and then someone's wide open down the field. So he actually does need that kind of structure in his life, I think. Jared TG says KOC's laid back style shows a ton of confidence in his process. I feel like if I were in that spot, I would always be wondering if I was doing enough or doing it the right way. I'm sure there is some of that, but I was thinking about this. Really, the timing of JJ McCarthy arriving is really good, because when you think about Ben Johnson, as we're talking about, like Ben Johnson doesn't know how to be a head coach. He's never been a head coach before. And he is figuring it out for the first time, how you are the face of an entire franchise and how you try to be an NFL head coach and how you coach a quarterback from the HC position and not just an offensive coordinator in a room, but kind of out in front of everybody. This is the first time he's going through all this. And, Kevin O'Connell did win 13 games in his first year, but he's had a lot of experience now. And he was able to work with an inexperienced quarterback last year from the head coach position. And so McCarthy arrives where O'Connell knows it works. He's seen it work. And last year was huge for that. I mean, the way last year ended, of course, everyone thought the same thing. Like, what a massive disappointment after a 14-win season. It's one of the best regular seasons in team history, and then you fail. But what we learned along the way and what some people like Kevin O'Connell learned about himself along the way may ultimately end up meaning a lot. I mean, Kevin O'Connell had to teach a quarterback who had never been good in the NFL, in fact, had been one of the worst with his number of starts in Sam Darnold, and make it work. And he was able to do that. It wasn't just a veteran quarterback who could learn his system. And he also, I think, changed a lot about that offense and its nuances and its details, but it was different the way that Sam Darnold ran the offense from the way that Kirk Cousins did. So I think last year was really important for that confidence that you're talking about with him teaching JJ McCarthy. John says Isaiah Rodgers playing on the outside. Yes. Isaiah Rodgers and Byron Murphy are the starting corners. And then Jeff Okuda comes in and plays on the outside with Byron Murphy in the nickel and Isaiah Rodgers on the outside. So he is purely an outside corner, not anything else that we've seen so far. And I think that he's always played outside corner, I think. But yeah, I mean, he's been one of the more exciting players, I think, so far in training camp. It's unfortunate that he got banged up just when the pads are coming on, because I guess the question is, how much do you get excited about Isaiah Rodgers based on just a little bit of training camp? But his skills, as far as his movement, his quickness, he's definitely bigger than like the 170 pounds that he's listed at from probably 5 years ago. But we'll see if he comes back tomorrow, then we'll start to get a look at him in pads every day. But it went through my mind. Did they kind of do it again here? Last year, they were able to pick up 3 guys who were all ascending, and that's what they're looking for with Isaiah Rodgers. Jared TG says, rate your guitar skill, but use football terms. Are you the GOAT, first team All-Pro, a star, or on the practice squad? Well, okay. In NFL terms, I would be a practice squad guy probably, but this is NFL terms. So the practice squad guys are still way better than anybody at football that you've probably ever met. And that's probably me with playing guitar. I'm probably better at it than anybody you've ever met, but I am not the GOAT. I'm not Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads or Jimi Hendrix or anything like that. I've just, played for a long time. But also the other thing is too that I haven't played a show since 2005 or 6, somewhere in that range. So that's another thing. So I'm just like the practice squad guys who have not actually played, or maybe XFL would be more like it. But I'm actually probably like a guy who could play pro, but I'm on his couch. They call me, hey, do you want to come in and play for us for the Broncos? And I say, nah, I'm retired, or I'm not chasing football anymore. Once upon a time, though, I did think about becoming a professional guitar player, but this kind of thing happened, and got into sports radio, moved here to Minnesota, started Purple Insider, and there's only so much time in the day. So I make my little jams from time to time in the summer, and that's what I do. So Justin says, y'all think that JJ can carry to a Super Bowl? If they're going to make it. Now, look, the Super Bowl, when we talk about the Super Bowl, it's like, okay, well, things have to go, as all of you know, for Vikings fans, all of you know, things have to go right to get to the Super Bowl. You have to have the right matchups. You have to have the right health. Look at Philadelphia last year was missing, I think, one guy out of 22 that were starters. You have to have the right health. You have to have the right matchup. I still believe that the Vikings are going deeper in the playoffs last year if they play the Bucks instead of the Rams, but they played the team that was the worst possible matchup. I also think that if it was a just world and the Vikings could have played a home game as opposed to going on the road with 14 wins, that they probably win a playoff game there too. They wouldn't have beat Philadelphia, but they probably could have won at least one last year. So things have to go right. But if you're asking, do the Minnesota Vikings have enough as far as a roster and the talent at quarterback to seriously compete for a Super Bowl? The answer is yes. A lot has to happen before that can get there. But JJ McCarthy is not some random guy they picked up off the street who looks good in practice. I mean, he's a first-round draft pick who went to Michigan and won a national championship at, I think he had just turned 21 years old, or maybe 20 years old. Like, this is a guy who was built for this. It should look this way. And we've seen this model really work. I mean, it really does. It actually kind of reminds me a lot of Jared Goff in 2017, 2018 with the Rams. Just so much talent there. Young quarterback, still figuring it out. But if you run the offense, you get it to the right place, make a few great throws a game, you've got something really good. Like, that's how good this roster is from top to bottom. Joe says the more Howell struggles, the more likely Kirk is here. I don't think they're doing that. I don't think they're going to create a big distraction for JJ McCarthy by bringing in the last guy. They would much rather just have a bad backup quarterback. And as I've said many times on the show, you guys know what I say. We don't talk about screwed. And if, JJ McCarthy goes out, you're screwed. And 2023 was certainly confirmation. Now, Case Keenum, Randall Cunningham, sometimes it happens, but even if you move on from Sam Howell, it's hard to find a good backup, and they're not going to bring in Kirk. And somebody mentioned Ryan Tannehill. It's like, when was the last time Ryan Tannehill had a good season? I don't know if it's going to be better than Sam Howell. Got to just play it out. And for them, they have to just hope that he starts to get it and it starts to click. And if it doesn't, then I don't know. This guy played a lot of games in the NFL, and some were really bad and some were pretty good. But so far, just hasn't really looked like someone that you could win games with. Ty says, I wonder if we run a way more run-centric offense until McCarthy gets up to speed, basically run an offense more like Michigan until we can morph back into the high-flying Vikings offense. I think we already saw this last year. We saw with Sam Darnold that early in the season, they used a lot more play action. They ran a lot on first down, and they relied on their defense. And they said to Sam Darnold, make a couple of great plays a game with your arm. The New York Giants throw at the goal line on fourth down. Great touchdown. He threw a bomb to Jefferson down the sideline. Fantastic play there. And the rest was do your job. It was some play action, They drew up a wide open touchdown for Jalen Naylor in that game. And then the next week against San Francisco, do something special, hit a 97-yard touchdown. And then at the end of the game, close it out with something special. But a lot in between was playing defense and running the football effectively and then throwing to open receivers. To start the season, to get the ball rolling, I think you can do it. I don't think you could do it for a full season. So maybe that's a 5-week plan. And then coming out of the bye week, you start to open it up. But it really depends on just how it's going. I mean, JJ McCarthy is going to run the offense. I think what you have to prepare yourself for is every once in a while, he's going to make a great throw on a crosser where you go, whoa, that was into a tight window and what a rocket. That was terrific. And then there's going to be a swing pass to Jordan Mason that he throws into the stands. Like, that's just where he is right now as a thrower, because he just hasn't thrown that many passes in comparison to a lot of other guys coming out in the league and a lot of other guys. And so we still see it in these practices where there's, wow, like that was a great throw on one play to Jordan Addison today. And he had a touchdown in the red zone to Addison. It was a nice play. And then he had another one where he overthrew, Josh Oliver, which is virtually impossible. So, I mean, that's just where we're at right now with the development of his accuracy. And it just has to get a little bit better and a little bit better. Tracy says, are we going to sign Christian Wilkins? I'm going to go with no. There wasn't much of an indication for Brian Flores that was something he was pounding the table for. And I like the way that Jalen Redmond, Levi Drake Rodriguez have come along, and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins as the backups. Also, the story about him, little strange. I don't want to be judgy, but there's a foot injury, and then there's also an interaction with another player that is a little strange. You could look it up. It's on ESPN. He kissed a teammate on the head, which, if you're really close with that teammate, I guess that's okay. But if that's not something that you normally do with that teammate, maybe might not go the right way. And I guess they were not too comfortable with that. Look, I don't know. I'm not a judgy person, but that's a little weird. I don't see too many dudes kissing each other out there. Again, not judgmental if that's your relationship with your teammates, but it's not. You shouldn't be doing that. And then some very strange clips came out of some odd things that he did to the other team. And I don't know. I just don't know if you want that whole thing to go along with it, a foot injury. Probably just don't have that storyline come into the building. Brian Flores would know better than anybody else, but they already have Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. I don't think Christian Wilkins would sign here, not when you already have two of the better players at that position in the league. And then there's also the foot thing, and where is that, and could he even play? So, nah, that's just kind of a no from me. I would just leave that alone. Plus, I like where the development guys are. I do like where especially Jalen Redmond, I think, has a chance to legitimately break out this year and break out in a rotational role. Ty says, has Blackman been out there? Yep. In fact, Blackman has gotten a good amount of first team reps the last couple days with Isaiah Rodgers being sidelined. So, the depth chart right now, and we just kind of did that snapshot 53, the depth chart right now, it could change. And it could change with Okuda and Blackman. It could change with any sort of injury, but I think Blackman's looked fine so far. He's moving well. It's getting back into the rhythm of these things is hard. And with a bunch of us standing on the sideline, judging the heck out of every play, sometimes it's unfair to these guys to even do that because he's coming back from this major injury. And we're like, well, how does he actually look? Or, oh, he's only getting second team reps, but the plan may be to bring him along. I guess we're going to have to find out. Tristan says, who's the front runner for Mr. Mankato or whatever it's called today? Oh, no, it is Mr. Mankato. It is Mr. Mankato forever, because it's about the soul of what Mr. Mankato is, not the location. And right now, to me, it's Zemiah Vaughn. Ben Urasek has a chance, but the world is wide open when we get into the preseason games. We've been talking about Zemiah Vaughn a lot, but he's going to have to do some stuff in preseason games to win Mr. Mankato. He's got to win not only a job, but he's also got to win the hearts of Minnesotans to win Mr. Mankato. Sloth, Caleb Williams, over under 3,999.5 yards. I'm going to say under 4,000 yards. Yeah, I just think they're going to run a lot. I think he's going to run a lot. And I would be surprised if he's getting 4,000 plus. So, all right. How has Jay Ward looked? Since when can't you kiss the homies? Hey, you can if the homies are cool with it. If you kiss your friends and they kiss you and everybody's fine with it, that's all right. But if they're not, and it sounds like whatever happened in the Raiders locker room was not welcomed, then it's probably going to cause a problem. I think that goes for pretty much everybody. But it's kind of awkward to get into that discussion. Jay Ward. So then we'll go to Jay Ward. No, I think Jay Ward's gotten a lot of opportunities. I think he's looked pretty good so far with Jay out there. Jay has looked like he's made progress over the last couple years. I don't know how much we'll actually see him when it comes to the season if everybody's healthy, but what Ward has given them at least is, I think, a sense for they've got another guy who could step up and play. And this has been a safety factory for this team. So anyway, oh man, it's of course after 9:00, which is where it gets weird, but I actually be really interested to see how any of the debate shows go about talking about this Christian Wilkins story, because I mean, my thing is just, if you got someone with a serious injury that was so bad his team released him, and then you have this other thing where at very least doesn't read the room very well with his teammate and causes some issue there, and then it gets out and then it becomes a whole thing. That's going to be brought up if you brought him in, and then you don't even know if he can contribute anything. And he's a good player when he's healthy, but if his team was so unhappy with this situation, regardless of how much each thing had to do with it, that they were going to get rid of him after paying him over $100 million last year. For me, that's just a stay away from that situation type of thing. Okay, well, it's been a great show, and out there at TCO Performance Center, and a great, because of you guys, by the way, awesome questions and discussion. It's funny, we're doing this every night, and yet I don't feel like we've gotten redundant with the questions and the conversation, because you guys keep it really fresh. So thank you for all those great questions and for watching and the videos. And hopefully you've seen some of the shorts as well that I've been trying to do right after practice and with some player interviews. Is McClendon as goofy in real life as he is in the videos? Yes, he is. Yeah, he has a pretty funny personality. Glenn, I can't say I'm in on Jameis Winston. It would be a fun backup, but I can't say that I'm into that. I think that would drive Kevin O'Connell absolutely crazy to have him as his quarterback. But anyway, so I had a conversation with Ahmad Hicks, who is from Fox 9 today out at TCO Performance Center. Because he's from Fox 9, we did 9 questions. And so we get into JJ McCarthy, we get into the offensive line, defense, all those sorts of things, and get a Super Bowl prediction from him as well, because why not? So here is my conversation. Well, let me answer one more question from Mitch, because it's a good one, and then my conversation with Ahmad Hicks. Mitch, your question, can you compare how JJ looks in training camp to how Darnold looked at this point last training camp? Yeah, I would say it's pretty close. I mean, honestly, I would say it's about the same. Where Darnold's first day of pads was horrendous, and then the next day he came back and looked really good. I didn't get a feel that Darnold was going to be good until after the first preseason game. He had a whole week of practices leading up to it, and then played really well in that one drive. And then he seemed to have a lot of confidence coming out of it. Then it started to click. So as far as we're going to give you the day to day, here's the breakdown. Here's how it looked. Here's my takeaways. But as far as bigger picture for McCarthy, I think it will start to become clearer as we go along. So far, I don't have any issue with how he's looked. I think it's been best case scenario. Today was a little ugly, but it's not that big of a deal, considering how they did it, how the refs look so far. That's funny. So I wouldn't knock down my win total. I wouldn't back off of my JJ McCarthy opinion, what he's going to be or what I've thought of him since he arrived here at all. Based on the first few days of practice, I would say the confidence has actually gone up for JJ McCarthy, even though today was a rough practice, but it's increased that McCarthy will be a good quarterback for this team based on what I've seen so far, because he's the same guy this year as QB1 as he was last year as QB2. It's the same attitude. It's the same approach. It's the same leadership, all that sort of stuff. And it's the same comfort. He doesn't seem to be putting too much pressure on himself or forcing it or being fake or any of that sort of stuff. And he's throwing the ball well. And again, until, a few details today. So, okay. Conversation with Ahmad Hicks now from TCO Performance Center this afternoon. Thanks, everybody. Welcome inside TCO Performance Center. Matthew Coller here, along with Ahmad Hicks, returning to the show from Fox 9. Also a podcaster now these days as well, not just a TV reporter. Why don't you pump the podcast before we get into this?
Yeah, H&H, the Henry and Hicks show. It's on Fox Local, Fox 9, YouTube. Our Fox 9 YouTube channel is with myself and Henry Lake. He's with WCCO Radio, has a couple of hours show himself. And so we talk everything sports, not just Minnesota related.
They're allowing the local TV people to do podcasts now. Very concerning competition, but we'll get you on here anyway. No, the last time you were on the show, I figured Fox 9 questions with Ahmad Hicks, right? Well, guess what? I've got 9 more questions based on what we have seen so far at training camp, so I'm just going to fire them up.
Let's do it.
Here's my first question. It's about the long snapper. No, I'm just kidding. Here's first question. Based on what you have seen so far from quarterback JJ McCarthy, give me a between 1 and 10 confidence rating that this Minnesota Vikings team can win 10 games or more with JJ McCarthy.
It's funny you bring this up. I was just debating with my friend on the way out here. I think they absolutely win 10 or 11 games. I think the only way they don't win 10 or 11 games is if he just goes out and plays the worst football of his career. He has the best team surrounding him, kind of like at Michigan and whatnot. So I think for 10, I'm going 10 because I just think he's confident. He's making throws during camp where you're like, all right, I can kind of see that, that confidence building for him, and he's looking off safety. So 10 for sure.
It is kind of funny that the main criticism of McCarthy coming out, which I think had some validity, is that he was surrounded by so much talent. And then he comes to the NFL and he is surrounded by so much talent. Yeah. After only a few days of watching practice, I would put my confidence rating quite high as well. And it's not just how he's throwing the football. I think it's how he's fitting in with the team. And when you played football, when someone's not fitting in, when someone's not really leading the team from that position, I think you can see it. I think everybody in a franchise knows it, and with McCarthy, you just get that sense from him that he's in command.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so noticeable when he's out there. The team listens to him, even the way he just commands the huddle in and out of, killing plays and going on to the next one. He's very experienced, and as I had to tell my friend earlier, this is not really his first season. Like, this is his second season. He had a very long offseason, to study the playbook and get up to speed, so I think he's going to be just fine.
And I've been impressed by how much he's continued to grow as a passer. I think that's probably the biggest thing for the confidence rating of being high. I think I'd go probably like an 8 for me. Okay. I'm answering these questions too. I don't know if I told you that. All right, next question here. What do you think the early impact is of Justin Jefferson missing this part of training camp, and what will it be as we go along?
I'm not putting too much stock into that because I just think that, yes, it's important to have your best wide receiver out there. But, look, you're only getting looks against your other first team, or your twos. Like, you're going to be able to get that any time of the year. It's not like these guys are going to go out and play preseason games and things like that. And I ultimately think that you need those reps during the regular season to build chemistry because as I talk to players in the NFL, they always tell me the preseason speed compared to regular season speed is night and day. So I'm not putting too much stock into Justin Jefferson missing time. I mean, it's unfortunate for JJ McCarthy and his timing a little bit, but the timing speeds up when the games start.
I also think that if he returns with, say, 2 weeks to go before the season and it's just the practices and it's not the training camp, that is unfortunate for the fans who come out here to watch Justin Jefferson, and you would like them to build up those reps. But at the same time, we're talking about the greatest receiver on earth. I mean, this is not somebody who I think has a lot of weaknesses that a quarterback's going to try to cover up or a lot of things that he can't do. do. If JJ McCarthy gives him a chance to catch the ball, he's going to catch it. I also don't think that he's a hard receiver to get on the same page with. I mean, Kirk Cousins in his first start found him for 175 yards back in 2020. Sam Darnold came out and by week 2 was hitting him on a 97-yard touchdown.
Exactly.
I mean, this is not a guy who has made life difficult on quarterbacks.
No.
So I don't think it will be much, but for the depth wide receivers, it could have an impact with those guys getting these reps.
Yeah, I think absolutely. The young guys are, prone to step up. We'll talk about one of those guys coming up, but Ty Felton. He needs all the reps he can get during camp right now. And when you do have a Justin Jefferson in your lineup, well, those reps get limited because it's going to be Jefferson, Naylor, and Addison. Now with Jefferson, now you're inserting other guys into other roles, and I think Addison is also getting a chance to kind of develop more. Saw him talking to Jefferson yesterday after one route. He didn't get open, and I saw Jefferson go like this, and I'm pretty sure he said, you're thinking too much out there. So it's giving Addison the reps he needs as a number 1, too.
And Addison still growing as a wide receiver. We've gotten used to guys coming out in the draft at 24 years old, but Addison was 21 and is still, I think, and he's even put on some muscle clearly in the offseason and could take even another step from where he is. So this could be helpful. Along with, I think TJ Hawkinson is really big for this offense and to be the security blanket for McCarthy. So if they can get on the same page as well, that will be important and not just Jefferson sucking up all the targets. So there could be some positive benefits to it so long as it is as mild as they're making it sound. Next question. Is there anything that is concerning you so far about this Vikings team based on what we've seen in the first couple of days of practice, either a player or the performance of a position group?
I feel like that's a tough question right now in training camp because the talent on both sides of the ball is so good. But I'm going to have to say the offensive line because there's no Christian Darrisaw right now. You have a rookie in Donovan Jackson and 2 guys in Ryan Kelly and Will Fries who are still working themselves back from injury and whatnot. So they've just been getting beat up on a little bit out there. But then again, you're talking about Harrison Phillips, Javon Hargrave, and Jonathan Allen, and then Jonathan Greenard and Andrew Van Ginkel. So like that's anybody's going to struggle against that. So, but that's the one thing of concern. Because just from what I understand that Christian Darrisaw is probably not going to start the season, playing. So I think, that's a red flag because you want his blind side, JJ McCarthy, protected. So if there's one area of concern for me, it's the offensive line right now. But I know they will be fine, I believe, week 7 to 8 once everybody gets on the field.
Yeah, they haven't given us a distinct timeline with Christian Darrisaw. You don't want to push it and say, hey, man, you got to get out there by week 1 because you need him for this entire season. At the same time, there's probably not a swing tackle in the league that you would want being out there over 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. Even Cam Robinson was a good NFL player, but eventually he got exposed last year at left tackle. Justin School is much more of a 1 week, 2 week type of player. I feel the same way. I also think it is a bit of a testament to Jonathan Greenard for how much Justin School looks like he's struggling. But I also think it's a little harder for Donovan Jackson to get up to speed when he doesn't have the left tackle there that he's supposed to have. And we haven't seen this offensive line with Will Fries at 100% either. I think it does speak a little bit to, and I like every depth offensive line is in tough shape. This isn't that bad. But it does speak to how nasty the D-line is and also how important the health of the offensive line is.
Yeah, and from what I understand, I don't think Christian Darrisaw is going to be out there for at least the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season. So, it's going to be tough for Skule, but he'll have a lot of help around him, should I say. Josh Oliver, a great extension of a left tackle or right tackle, so they'll probably be chipping a lot, to help out Skule and all that.
If it goes into the travel over to Dublin and London, that could be problematic considering who they're playing. So they need to be at least up to full strength, I think, against Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Those games will be a lot tougher without Christian Darrisaw. So
yeah, for sure.
We will be on Darrisaw watch, of course. Next question for you. Who do you think will have more sacks this season? Andrew Van Ginkel, Javon Hargrave, or Jonathan Allen? They've all looked pretty darn good so far early in camp.
You got to go Andrew Van Ginkel. I think that Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen will be asked to do a lot as far as taking on double teams, creating lanes for Dallas Turner, for Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Greenard to rush. So I just see Andrew Van Ginkel as that wild card. I mean, he can line up on the left side. He can line up inside. He can line up on the right side. Like, he can do a multitude of things. And I think Flores is going to just have so much fun putting him in different scenarios to get after the quarterback.
So what I'm really curious about with Van Ginkel is, does he play entirely the outside linebacker spot, or do we see him moving back to an inside linebacker at times? Like, does he take off some of the pass reps or pass rush reps that he had from last year when he had so much success to make sure that Dallas Turner can get on the field and have all three of them? Because I'm envisioning a scenario where they take Ivan Pace off the field, put Van Ginkel on the inside linebacker. We've seen it a little bit so far at camp, and then have Turner and Greenard rushing the passer. If that's the case and he's dropping back in coverage, it might bring down his sack total. I still would expect that he's going to press for double-digit sacks just based on how this works. Also wondering about what they're going to do with Hargrave and Allen to get them away from some of those double teams, like stunts and twists and blitzes and all those things to try to get them matched up one-on-one.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And I think when you look at the base this year, it's looking like more of a solid 3-4, like a solidified 3-4. You got Harrison Phillips, Javon Hargrave, and Jonathan Allen up front. And then you got those other big guys, JG and Andrew Van Ginkel outside. But I also think that maybe what we aren't looking at right now is the guy who will be spelling Harrison Phillips or Jonathan Allen, and that may be outside of a Jalen Redmond and a Levi Drake Rodriguez, it may be a Dallas Turner getting on the field at the same time with JG and Andrew Van Ginkel. So I think Brian Flores is going to have a lot of fun, but I know when I look at that defensive front during training camp, they are massive, they are athletic, and they're going to get after the quarterback.
And there's just so much talent there. I mean, when we're talking about the potential of taking Pace off the field a little bit, I mean, that's a good player for this team over the last couple of years, and that's someone where, like, how do you get everybody on the field at the same time? We've talked about, Josh Metellus playing back at more of a traditional safety spot because you kind of have to at times to keep him on the field. Give me your favorite, nobody's heard of this guy yet, but they probably will soon once we get into the preseason action and the viewing public gets to see a lot of these depth players. Give me your guy so far in camp that has stood out to you and that you think Vikings fans will soon know.
Dante Fleming. He's a wide receiver, 6'2", rookie out of Tulane. He's just made several splashy plays throughout camp. One in particular yesterday on a Sam Howell pass on a rollout where he probably would have gotten sacked, but he extended the play, made the throw, and it was a hell of a catch by Fleming. And I just think they don't have a ton of wide receiver depth this season. Like Rondale Moore is a good guy, who I think will be a contributor absolutely on special teams and a skill guy who you put the ball in his hands. But I think they need another X receiver, like someone who was like a Tristan Jackson last year when, Jets goes down or if he goes down and misses time. You got somebody that can step in. So I think Dante Fleming has kind of shown that versatility, and I think he'll only continue to show that this season and preseason.
He has caught my eye as well, especially as a downfield wide receiver, and his ability to track the football. And I had a conversation with Keenan McCardle a couple years ago, and I said, well, what's the number one thing you look for in your scouting wide receivers? That was what he said. Tracking the football, because different speeds or different leaping ability even, okay, you can find guys who catch deep passes that are not exactly the Randy Moss built in a lab to do it. But if they can't track the football and bring it in, then you have no chance at it. And Fleming has done that. So definitely has caught my eye a couple times as well. There was a throw in day 4 for Max Brosmer that was where he was flying across the middle of the field and made a play. So he could be one of those guys that we never talk about and then all of a sudden has 6 catches in preseason or something and emerges. I want to know from you, speaking of preseason, how you think Kevin O'Connell will handle JJ McCarthy in preseason. Will he play him a lot, none at all, a little? How much?
That's $1 million question. I think he has to at least get one drive, 6 to 7 plays. Just let him get his feet wet, get back out there after last season, because he did have such a good preseason opener last year. So I think you got to let him get out there, get a series underneath his belt, get some throws out there, and then get him out the game. And I don't think as much experience as he needs, I just don't think you want to give it to him and chance it in preseason. So I don't think we see much of the starters at all, except for maybe the ones on defense, like a Jeff Okuda or something like that. But I don't think we'll see much of JJ this preseason.
So go back and forth a little bit, because I think it is good for McCarthy to put on the helmet, put on the pads, go out in front of US Bank Stadium and get a couple series under his belt. But at the same time, as you mentioned, do you want him out there without his full offensive line or without his full bevy of wide receivers? Do you want him running a first-team offense where it's no Jefferson? Of course, we knew he wasn't going to be in preseason, but probably don't want Jordan Addison doing too much. You probably don't want TJ Hawkinson doing too much. We all remember a couple years ago when they lost Irv Smith Jr. for the entire season by playing them in preseason. Like, that's something Kevin O'Connell just does not believe really in doing. I like the idea of a couple series maybe, but then they're going to have the joint practices, and you know that they're not going to play him in preseason after that. So first game, just get some of the jitters out. I also think with McCarthy that we don't need to talk about him in the way like he is a rookie and you need to baby him and things like that.
Right.
I mean, the way they did it with Sam Darnold was one series, and then you're out. The way they did it with Kirk, one series, then you're out. So if they do the same thing with JJ McCarthy, that would make sense. Treat him like the second-year starting quarterback he is, not like he just got here.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Just give him one series, let him get his feet wet, get him out.
Okay, question number 7 of 9 for you. When you watch practice, this is more of a philosophical thing. What is the random thing that you watch that most people sitting up on our perch or in the stands would not be looking at during training camp? It is so much happening all at once with training camp. 2 different fields, 90 players, 100 coaches. There's a lot happening. What do you like to watch?
DBs and wide receivers. I'm a sucker and a junkie for those two specifically. And what I want to see is, if a DB is giving up a catch, how close are you to that wide receiver when you give up a catch? Are you right there to go make a play? Like, I know at practice, like, you can't take a guy to the ground, but in the game, could you typically push him out of bounds? Could you pick him up or do something like that, or get a PBU if you're diving? So I love to see how close a DB stays to a wide receiver. And for a wide receiver, I love to see the separation they can create at the top of their route or their releases. That's something that I love to see, because in the NFL, you're going to get so many looks. And it's like, you have to be able to get off press man, and you have to be able to make somebody miss and get open. And I think the one thing that separates like a Justin Jefferson and other receivers in the league is Justin Jefferson can go line up at X and say, I'm getting open. Like, or you can put him anywhere, he'll get open. Other receivers need to be schemed open. So, like, that's one thing I love seeing. Like, how much separation can you create? How many yards is the DB behind you in one-on-ones and things like that? So that's something that I love watching.
Well, I like watching all the random apparatuses that they have. Like, they have a helmet that's on a stick that they jab the running backs with, and you're like, does that work? Does that do something? But also the one-on-ones between offensive line and defensive line are really something. If you're standing close, I mean, it's like watching National Geographic with those guys. I mean, the power that these guys have against each other. And I think you can learn a lot about both offensive and defensive linemen by just watching them go one-on-one against each other. Those drills are really fascinating because just when you watch a play, it's like a mass of humanity running into each other. But this, you get to see each individual battle and what that really looks like in a game. All right, 2 more questions. Who do you think is going to be better this year, the Green Bay Packers or the Chicago Bears?
I'm going to have to go the Packers, just because I think the consistency with LaFleur and Jordan Love, like, they have their guys, Josh Jacobs, they bring in Matthew Golden. So, like, they were already fairly decent last year. They just added to it. Whereas I do think that the Bears will be improved from last season, but I think Ben Johnson's offense is going to be a lot. And I think Caleb Williams is going to have his growing pains. Like, he's going to have moments where he does good for weeks at a time, and then there will be weeks where he's like, you know what? I thought I knew the playbook. I thought I knew where my receiver was going, but we still aren't on the same page. So, with that being said, I still think they're like a game or two apart. But I would have to give the edge to the Green Bay Packers, just because Jordan Love has been there. There's a lot of pressure on him this year to deliver, so I think he kind of understands that.
Well, and what isn't talked about a whole heck of a lot with the Bears is their defense, which they still have some key pieces, but do they have a front seven that's nasty or scares you? Do they have a defensive line outside of Montez Sweat? I'm not concerned that much about Grady Jarrett. Right. I would have been 5 years ago, but not so much at this point. And the Packers, I think, have a more complete defense and a good defensive coordinator, as we saw against the Vikings a couple times last year. So I would agree with you. I think the Bears are probably a year away, if it actually works for them, from being a serious contender. But Caleb has to prove that first. All right, last question. 9 questions with Ahmad Hicks. Feel free to use it with you and Henry Lake on your podcast. I want to know your Super Bowl matchup right now, after a few days of Vikings camp and a few days of camp around the National Football League. Who do you think will make the Super Bowl?
When you sent that, I had to think long and hard. From the AFC side, you got to go Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I know it's an easy, low-hanging fruit type one, but you got to think he didn't have Rashee Rice last year. Hollywood Brown was injured and nicked up, a majority of the season. So now you're talking about a Travis Kelce, a Robert Tonyan, then a Rashee Rice comes back. Then you also have Hollywood Brown. You also have Xavier Worthy. You have Sky Moore. Like, there's so many weapons around him. And then you also have a quarterback that's hurt all offseason, how he's not in the Madden 99 club, how he's losing a step, how he's not that same guy from a couple of years ago. So I think he's itching to get back to the mountaintop. So I got Kansas City coming out the AFC side. And the NFC's tough. There's a lot of talent. I ultimately think Detroit takes a step back. I think they take a step back. No Ben Johnson. I mean, people underestimate how important the offensive coordinator is. So I think they take a step back there. So they won't be my favorite. But I think you got to go. It's either the Vikings or the Eagles. That's right, or the Rams. It's really hard for me to pick because the Rams' defensive front is really good. Devontae Adams. So this answer is going to change probably, but I'm going to say right now the Eagles because they're the defending champs.
Just say Vikings.
Vikings. Okay, yeah. That's what I wanted to say, but it's like you can't. I don't want to put too much pressure on JJ McCarthy or things like that.
Okay, well, I don't know if he's going to watch this podcast or remember if you said it, but. I don't have it yet. My pick. I got to think about it, but I think Buffalo or Baltimore is going to do it. At some point, they will break through the same way that like Drew Brees eventually broke through, or Peyton Manning. Like, those quarterbacks are just that great. The NFC is just super wide open. There's part of me that wants to say the Commanders, but are they really there yet around Jaden Daniels as a complete roster? And I can't, in good conscience, pick the Vikings to go to a Super Bowl until they're in the fourth quarter, ready to kneel down to go to the Super Bowl. Just the history of this franchise. But no, I'm just kidding. We'll see as we go through training camp. Ahmad Hicks, say it again. H&H,
the Henry and Hicks Show on Fox Local and Fox 9's YouTube channel.
There you go. Thanks so much, Ahmad Hicks.
Appreciate you guys.
Catch y'all soon.
There you go. Great conversation with Ahmad Hicks there. And thank you all again for stopping by the podcast. And we'll do it again tomorrow, guys. And then we'll actually have an off day on Thursday. So appreciate it. And hey, look, if you want written version with lots of quotes from out there, conversations, observations, purpleinsider.football is the newsletter. It's also a great way to support the show. Some of you do super chats sometimes, but another way would be signing up for the newsletter. So thank you so much for everybody who listened, participated. Another epic live stream, but I'm having a great time here during training camp. So we will see you all tomorrow night. Take care, everybody. Football